I'll call the meeting to order. This is the executive session of the Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting of September 24th, 2013. The first item on our agenda are the meeting minutes of September 10th, 2013. Who is sitting for Commissioner Kennelly? Commissioner Parker is sitting for the executive session now. So the first is the meeting minutes of September 10th, 2013. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Parker. Any discussion, comments on the minutes? Good. Ready to vote? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes of September 10th, 2013, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved unanimously. Next item is 4800 Congress Street, review of preliminary subdivision open space disposition.
I'll give you a brief overview. The application for re-subdivision for property into 3 lots with an existing house and 2 building lots was filed July of this year and is currently pending our review. The re-subdivision submitted and dated July 3rd shows an open space area of approximately an acre, 47,669 square feet, lying northeast corner of the property adjacent to land the Audubon Society of Connecticut owns. The Audubon has forwarded a letter to the commission, which I think I gave you copies of tonight, confirming its willingness to accept the open space, though it might merge with the existing space that is adjacent to this particular property. Now, the applicant submitted a revised plan just because in our regulations, section 2.3.2, there's a discretionary review the commission has having to do with that the commission may require that the percentage of land within the proposed dedicated open space, which is open space or watercourse, be no greater than the percentage of land within the entire subdivision. Again, that's a discretionary decision on your part. Really, the reason for that is if it was going to be adjacent to town property, if it was some type of town open space, if the town had an issue with wetlands being in there for some reason, whether it was going to be a park or a playland or playground, I think that's why it's there. Very simply, with this particular situation, the Audubon wants the entire piece of property, and frankly, I think the configuration that was submitted in the revision kind of taking the wetlands out of the proposed open space is probably not something you probably want to be interested in. So the bottom line is the proposed subdivision acreage is appropriate, meets our regulations for our size, and Audubon is interested. So again, as you know, in our subdivision regulations, when we have a subdivision like this, you need to make a preliminary review and make a preliminary decision whether or not you want to accept the subdivision, or accept the open space or payment in lieu. Just for your information, the payment in lieu would be approximately $100,000.
That's a question.
Yes, question for staff.
Mr. Ivanchik, looking at the maps, it appeared that the revised offered a slight, like 4/100th of an acre larger,
Yeah,
but your view is that the wetland issue
Yeah, in this instance, if the Audubon had some problem with the wetland offer, would they
want it? Sure.
Yes.
Makes sense. Okay.
So the Audubon would prefer the map
original.
of July 3rd.
Yes, the original.
Not the revised.
Right.
And we already kind of made a finding of that we favored that one, or no?
No.
No, we have not yet.
No.
So it's just two.
That's what's there tonight
Okay.
for you to...
That's right, I'm sorry, there were 2 of them last week, this wasn't one of them.
Correct.
Okay. So we're being asked to
Make
make
a
a
preliminary-
preliminary recommendation. It's not binding. We could always decide to take the money later if there's testimony at the
Right.
hearing that indicates we should take the money. So we would need a motion to accept either the original plan or the alternate plan, or to recommend the original plan or alternate.
Yeah, the motion would be to your preliminary approval of accepting the open space as represented in the original map.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to do just that, if you wish.
Thank you. Commissioner Kelly has moved to accept, and Commissioner Jacobson has seconded. Commissioner Suter has a question?
No, just a clarification, we're talking about the re-subdivision map of July 3rd, 2013, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is the first one that isn't described as revised, I believe. The second one says, I think, it says it on top. Yeah.
first one says re-subdivision, the second
This one says alternate plan.
alternate plan,
Yeah,
right.
it's not
That's
the one that
it.
says
It has a-
alternate
Right, but
plan.
it's right, yeah, it says it right above that re-subdivision.
So we're good.
Yeah.
Down here it's,
Yeah.
Yeah, alternate plan was the one.
The alternate plan is dated September 9th.
Right.
And this has the open space that's 47,699 square feet.
So the motion is to recommend the property in lieu of the fee, rather than the fee, and to use the initial proposal rather than the alternate plan dated in September.
Yes. Any discussion on the motion made by Commissioner Kennelly? No? Commissioner Kennelly's here now, so Commissioner Parker is no longer sitting on these matters.
All my power is gone.
All your power is gone. Well, we'll
Still
get
the
it,
power
we'll get it back
preserved,
later. We do have 7, right? Got it correctly? Okay, so if we're ready to vote, that would be to recommend the open space proposal, would that be included in the subdivision application? It's a preliminary recommendation. All in favor of the motion made by Commissioner Kelly, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimously recommended. The next item on our agenda is 411 Bronson Road, Broad River Lane. Request of Paul Richter for reconsideration of the sidewalk requirement on Broad River Lane.
Yes, you received this request, just to highlight the letter of request. Essentially, this subdivision was approved a little while ago on the cul-de-sac. There's 2 road frontages, essentially, the road frontage along Bronson Road and then along the cul-de-sac road, Broad River Lane. If you remember at the hearing, there was some discussion. Neighbors had spoken having to do with considering whether or not to waive the requirement for a sidewalk on the one side of Broad River Lane. If the map, I think Jim sent you a copy of the map also that indicated that there are 2 mature trees located
Here's a picture.
in the proposed area where the sidewalk would be established. I think you also did receive from Mary Cody, who I think did speak at the hearing also, a letter essentially outlining what they discussed at the hearing at the time. And again, supporting this, requesting the commission to support this request for waiving that one portion of the sidewalk, the one along Broad River Lane. The portion along Bronson Road would be maintained and continue. So essentially, that's what the request is in front of you. The explanation of why is outlined in Mr. Richter's letter.
Okay, so the motion would be to reconsider the sidewalk requirement?
Yeah, the motion very simply
Save
would-
the tree.
You would
Do we,
waive, you would act to waive the section of, a portion of the section of the sidewalk that fronts on Broad River Lane.
don't we need a 6-to-1 vote to do that?
Yes.
That's what we need.
5 to 2.
You should.
I'm sorry, 3, yes. for a,
3/4.
6 to 1, yes.
Right, so, yeah, it's in section 4 of our
Correct.
subdivision. We need a 3/4 vote of all members to, in other words, we can't
waive
waive
our-
any of
right.
our own regulations
Right.
without a 3/4 vote.
Oh, right.
So we need 6 affirmative votes. So the request, which we can take up if somebody wants to make a motion, is to reconsider the sidewalk. And what would we do in lieu of sidewalks? They just put them on
There would still be
curbs?
curbs and aprons for the driveways would still be maintained.
Asphalt curbs or concrete curbs?
I believe they were concrete.
They look concrete in the picture.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so we would need a motion on this.
Yes.
Motion by anyone?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, just for discussion
Yeah.
purposes to consider this.
and I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Kennelly, second by Commissioner Suter. Any discussion?
Well, what I would ask is,
Okay.
did the tree warden feel that to save the tree, the entire sidewalk would have to not be, or is there an issue here, Joe, in terms of?
Yeah, I think the reason why it's in front of you is it
Right, I
would
mean, I
be
see the
very
picture.
difficult for him to work a sidewalk,
Oh, right,
safe
right.
sidewalk, around this tree in a way that, first of all...
There's a root
create
structure, right,
Create a
right.
safe sidewalk, but also in a way that would
Will
not...
kill the tree.
Correct.
Right, because, I mean, it's an old growth tree, people want to keep the tree. Older growth, not old, but older growth.
Yes, Commissioner Suter.
First First, I'd like to note that Mrs. Cody's letter. Yeah. Now, Mrs. Cody's letter describes the cul-de-sac in more detail as being 3 homes at the moment, and it'll be 5 in toto when the other 2 are built as part of the new subdivision. This is a very small residential area. As she has stated in her letter, everyone there has gone along quite nicely without sidewalks, as they've been raising their children for anywhere from 20 to 50 years. And as a practical matter, and also in the interest of saving 2 beautiful trees, I think we should waive our sidewalk requirement. There's also the additional consideration, which I pointed out at the last hearing, that according to our subdivision regulations, it's not at all clear that we have the authority to require a sidewalk in this particular subdivision, because it's not new. It's been there for quite some time, and section 3.10 of our regulations says we only have authority to require sidewalks on new streets in residence A, B, and C zones. So I think we should also take that into consideration.
Anyone else? Mr. Jacobs.
There have been, over the years, many times when I brought up the idea that the RTM should give us the authority to accept payment in lieu of sidewalks. This has never gone through. I would feel better about this if we could accept payment in lieu of sidewalks to put sidewalks where they're needed in another part of town. But this has yet to be acted upon.
Anyone else? Mr. Wagner?
So was the issue of the tree not before us when we were initially considering this? Because, they made the request at the hearing. I remember we talked about it, and we reached a conclusion that we were going to require sidewalks.
Yeah, the tree was mentioned. I think at the time, though, we did not have a report from the tree warden indicating just how the establishment of the sidewalk would affect this tree and the other tree that was mentioned in Mrs. Cody's letter. So yeah, I mean, it was mentioned at the hearing that they existed, that there were some mature trees there. It did show up on a plan, but at that moment, we didn't have the tree warden's specific recommendation or review, other than that there were street trees there that had to be built.
So I recall us talking about how, this side of the street where there's now only 1 home, where there will be 2 new homes for 3 total, and there is a bus stop on that corner, and that with 2 new homes, essentially in a family neighborhood where there are young kids and they anticipate additional young children who are going to be taking the bus, that, at the time, we decided that the sidewalks for safety reasons were, a very wise thing. Particularly, even if it is just on that one side, because that's where the bus stop is located, and it would allow all the kids to congregate on a sidewalk, not on Bronson Road, which is a very busy road. And so they could congregate on the sidewalk on the side street, and service these 2 new homes. Is there any way that we can accommodate this tree issue and still maintain some sidewalks, in this area the way we decided at our last meeting? Maybe the sidewalk breaks and the kids just walk around the tree and then they continue on the sidewalk.
I don't really have an opinion either way on that. I don't know. First of all, remember now, this sidewalk is in the town right away, so it would be maintained, and whatever liability remained would be with the town of Fairfield. I don't know. I mean, if you're asking my opinion, my gut reaction is if you have a tree in the middle of a sidewalk, I don't know if that's acceptable or
just a question.
efficient enough. The only other comment I'll make, and this just has to do with Mrs. Cody's letter, is there's been a bus stopping there before these new houses, and they'll continue to stop there. And there, to the best of my knowledge, there has been no issues. Now, if your point of view is that because of 2 additional houses and the possibility of an increased number of students,
Those driveways, I
that's,
think.
the bottom line, that's your call.
Well, I was going to ask staff, Joe, this question. We have the letter from Mr. Richter reflecting the tree warden's feelings about this. He writes, there is a dogwood tree in the path of the sidewalk in front of 35 Broad River Lane that the town tree warden, Ken Placker, does not want removed. Do we have like a letter from him saying, please be advised, TPZ, that your condition for sidewalks will lead to the removal of this tree?
No, but I think we did talk to Mr. Placco about it. As a matter of fact, we wanted, he's out of town until next week.
Okay.
But I could represent that what's represented by Mr. Richter is true.
So is the opinion then of the tree warden that you can't have a sidewalk without removing the tree?
Correct.
My point is, I'm not taking issue with the notion that if we put a sidewalk all the way through, that the tree would have to be removed. I mean, that's what we're being told.
Right.
My point is, if we have a sidewalk that's otherwise, well, I don't know what, 30 feet long, and you got a break in it for 3 or 4 feet, where the tree exists, and the kids just,
I think,
they continue
again,
along.
just my opinion, that'd be something that I think the Public Works Department engineer would have to make a comment on, whether or not they want a sidewalk that's ultimately going to be turned over to them with a break in it,
Yeah.
with a tree in the middle of it. I don't know.
Okay. Does anybody else wish to comment? 'Cause I don't waive sidewalks. It's just, I think we should have a sidewalk in every street in town. So I recall this debate. I recall the same people asking. And I'm fine if you want to do it. I understand about saving the tree. I'll say that, like, near that road on Bronson Road, years ago, there was a subdivision, 2 houses. We required a sidewalk. The applicants came to us and says, look, we'll pay you money if you don't make us do a sidewalk. We don't want to do a sidewalk. Bronson Road is 5 miles long. They don't really have sidewalks on there. And we said, yes, you have to do it. And they came back and asked us, and we said, again, no, you have to do it. They came back and asked us, like, pretty please. And again, we said they had to. And now, I think that was actually represented at this hearing, that sidewalk does offer some safety in that area. So I'm not keen to waive sidewalks unless it creates a safety hazard by having the sidewalk.
Then there
So-
was a circumstance in town where that existed, where we had, it just, the grade and all of that stuff, and where sidewalks would have created more of a problem than it solved. But here, we had the applicant in a hearing where we were asking questions. We had the traffic, I think Galante was here. We asked him about the sidewalks and whether that would be, create a safer, for safety purposes. I believe, if I recall, he agreed with that. I would be amenable to some further input from the tree warden, Public Works, and the applicant on a creative way to, avoid this issue. But a wholesale waiver of this requirement is not something that I think we should be contemplating.
Mr. Alessi, you had a comment also?
Oh.
Did you? Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
Mr. Devanchik said there hasn't been an incident, and kids have been going to school for years, but that doesn't mean we can't prevent one. That's what I think. And you know what? We lost thousands of trees during Sandy. If we have to take down the tree and have the contractor replace it with a new, mature tree away from the sidewalk, so be it. We come across this all the time as a cost-cutting measure for the contractor or developer, and it happens before us in every subdivision that we get. I can understand if there's no other sidewalks anywhere and we have one house with a sidewalk, which we've seen and we've come across and we've waived. But something like this with a bus stop on a busy road, on a busy corner, like Commissioner Wagner stated, I don't feel we should waive the sidewalks.
Commissioner Cannella, yeah.
Thanks. I'm definitely in the mind of agreeing. I agree with Commissioner Wagner that I think that we'd like to see some sort of middle ground. Now, I made the motion for the waiver, but just to get discussion going. But what I'm wondering is if it's possible that we could do what he's describing, which is get a little bit more input. Joe, the bottom line is I think we want a side. The commission's not going to vote to waive the sidewalk. On the other hand, it would be nice to save the tree. So can we table this motion, and can we ask these folks, I'll gladly have us just vote to or make a new motion to table this right now, and ask, because, you know, it's a shame to lose the tree, but there is this desire not to lose the sidewalk, not to...
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's what I think right now. I think we're entitled, with the understanding that we'd like to get some more input from in the next week or 10 days. Okay,
Why
just
are we
see
ta-
if it's
why are we
possible.
tabling it?
Because the idea would be to see what Matt suggested, which is, could you possibly have a sidewalk with a break and the tree? You know what I'm saying? Is that okay? I mean, I know you're saying like get it out, but
Would you gonna keep walking into the tree, they're just gonna go, why can't they?
right, they
put
go
it-
around it. I mean, my point
But
is
why
just,
don't we put the sidewalk around it?
well, I'm saying maybe you can do
The motion is just for a revised, table it for a revised, now, we could approve it, we could deny it, or we could table it, and that was,
Yeah.
I think, a fair...
So,
we don't...
we know why.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Mr. Wagner.
And just as a final note, I mean, this isn't, you know, espousing any predisposition that, you know, I would be amenable to, you know, a common ground where there's a break in the sidewalk, but I think we just don't have that information. And so it would be helpful.
okay. So, can I move
You
to
can
table the
you can
motion? Yeah.
withdraw your
I'll
other
withdraw my
motion and
Yeah.
move to table it.
I'll withdraw the
Unless you wanna
motion
make that
and
motion.
move to table, if that's okay.
That's
Can I
the
do that in
motion
one
that's
move?
before us now. Does anybody second the motion to table?
Second.
Yeah.
Second by Commissioner Jacobs. Any discussions on the motion to table? We just don't decide it now. And with the understanding, we're looking for some additional information.
To see if some compromise is possible,
What I'll do
rather
is
than,
contact Public Works and explain to them your
yeah,
issue.
If they got some configuration that they'd want to present to us, we'd be willing to hear it. So
Yeah.
that's what the motion is.
yeah.
What are you looking at me for?
Because I thought you might have something to say about it.
Well, I got nothing to say.
Okay, are we ready to vote on the motion to table? All in favor of tabling this application, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's tabled. Next item is 960 Mill Hill Terrace, request of Ed Walsh for a release, 50% release of a $51,510 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an R3 zone.
Yeah, this is a subdivision, three-lot subdivision was approved a while ago. The bonded improvements included things like drainage, street trees, monuments, site stabilization, yard drains, and driveway aprons. Most of the in-kind work is completed. What is really left to complete is the individual lot stabilization, some monuments. The bottom line is engineering feels that a 50% release is fine. There would be more than enough money to cover what's left to be, what improvements are left to be completed.
Okay, do we have a motion on this bond release?
Motion to release?
Motion to release the bond by Commissioner Wagner, second by Commissioner Jacobson. Any discussion on the bond release? No? Okay, are we ready to vote? All in favor of a 50% release of a $51,510 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an R3 zone for 960 Mill Hill Terrace, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is the bond release is approved. Next, we have old business, 500 Algonquin Road, special exception application of Brooklawn Country Club for renovations and additions to an existing pool house in a AAA zone.
Mr. Chairman, just to briefly overview what was presented to you at the public hearing last meeting. Brooklawn Country Club, located at 500 Algonquin Road, is proposing a renovation to the existing pool house. The renovation would involve the reconfiguration of the existing covered portion of an existing patio to include a second floor dining area and a new ceiling over an exterior terrace. The club also takes the opportunity to renovate, will take this opportunity to renovate the interior of this existing structure. As mentioned at the hearing, the club is not contemplating a change in the membership levels. These improvements are designed to meet the current and ongoing needs and requests of the existing membership. If you remember, the second floor terrace would be approximately 889 square feet, the new addition. The rear covered entry would be 213 square feet, and the front portico that's proposed would be 48 square feet. And that, Mr. Chairman, essentially what was presented at the public hearing.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Kennelly. Any discussion of this? Yes, Mr. Jacobs.
They have more than the land they need by a long shot. It's a very nice addition. I see no reason not to approve.
Anybody else? No? Okay, we ready to vote? 500 Algonquin Road, special exception application of Brooklawn Country Club for renovations in addition to existing pool house. The motion's been made to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It's approved unanimously. Next, we move to compliances. 400 Post Road, application of Robert Shulton to establish a medical marijuana dispensary in a portion of an existing building, premises and design commercial district. I believe this was on our agenda last time and was tabled.
Yes.
Do we have a motion on this?
Yeah. Can I, quick question from staff. What is the timing?
You could just motion to remain on the table if you want. You
Yeah.
can take it up for action, but I mean...
What's the timeline?
Oh, no, you're good. With timing,
We're good?
we're fine.
All right.
I mean, if you want to complete the current hearing you have, that
Yeah.
prior to dealing
No.
with this, that's fine. So you could maintain it on the
Yeah.
table.
So-
Is it 65 days from the last meeting?
Yes,
That's what he used the question.
Yes.
So it's 51 days from today.
yes.
Right.
So you have about 7 weeks.
Yeah, so for all the reasons that I expressed at the last hearing, I'll move to table the item.
I'll second.
Motion to table by Commissioner Wagner, second by Commissioner Kennelly. Any discussions on the motion to table? Okay, 400 Post Road, application of Robert Shulton to establish a medical marijuana dispensary in a portion of existing building in the design commercial district. The motion has been made to table it and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The matter is tabled. Next item, before we go to public hearing, is 85 Mill Plain Road, application of Fischel Properties for 2 new sports exercise wellness operations in an existing building in a design industrial district.
Yeah, just to paraphrase the letter you received, this may be the last time you have to deal with this particular building, but the 2 new groups of sports exercise wellness operators interested in leasing the remaining 2 vacancies of 2,200 square feet and 912 square feet respectively, with an addition of the 2 tenants. The facility would be 100% leased. The Sports and Wellness is looking to lease the 2,200 square feet on the second floor of the building in front of the complex. The new venture will focus on sports-related weight training, nutrition, all the good stuff that runs in and out of these buildings. The hours of operation for the facility are Monday through Saturday. Hours of operation 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and by appointment. The second proposed use for the 912 square feet is Effortless Life Fitness Center, personal training facility, primary one-on-one exercise training sessions designed to accommodate a wide range of people. As these users are keeping with the others in the complex, they respectfully request the commission approve the parking ratio of 2.7 per car. Essentially, that's what you did last meeting. You looked at what was left, essentially this small portion of the building, and you agreed to maintain the 2.7 per thousand parking. With that calculation, the number of parking spaces that exist there cover all the uses that exist and that these 2 new uses would produce. Other than that, there are 2 uses that are permitted in that zone, and needless to say, consistent with the other uses that are made of this facility.
Thank you, Mr. Devanchik. Do we have a motion?
I'll move, Mr. Chairman. I'll second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly, second by Commissioner Alessi. Any discussion?
It does finish leasing it out. They do maintain the 2.7. It's tight, but they've made it work. And throughout the process over the last couple of years, I was a big no on what was proposed before this, and so I wanted very much, if it was reasonable, to try to work with them, and they've zeroed out at 2, in terms of spaces left, and at 2.7. I would support it.
Thank you, Mr. Kennelly. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Alessi.
I'd just say it's been a success for the kids in the town. It's full. It's been a success for this town, and this is going to close it out. So I make a recommendation that we approve this.
Thank you. Any other comments? I would echo the comments of my fellow commissioners as well. You know, the applicant, I thank the applicant. It's nice when things work out, and this did, it did evolve. It started out, we're going to start with this, and as uses kept getting tacked on, and it built on its success, and we worked through the parking as it went. I think the whole process worked very well, and it wound up being a good use of this property, and a lot better than what the alternatives were, so. Happy to support this. Anyone else? Okay. The motion's been made to approve 85 Mill Plain Road, application of Fischel Properties for 2 new sports, exercise, wellness operations in an existing building in a design industrial district. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It's approved unanimously. We just need a couple minutes to reconfigure for public hearing. If anybody This is the September 24th, 2013 public hearing of the Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. We have 3 items on our agenda tonight. The first item is a bond release, 150 Borowski Road, Oakwood Drive, request of the Michaud Group LLC for 100% release of a $21,102 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in a B zone. Is there somebody here to present this application?
How you doing? I'm Mark Michaud with Michaud Group.
And you're requesting a bond?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm requesting a full 100% bond request.
Okay. And you know, it's actually required that we actually have a public hearing on it. That's why, unlike a special permit. So for subdivision, no, that's good. No, so it's okay. Do we have a letter in our file on this?
Yes, we do.
Mr. Devanchik?
Mark Woolley has submitted a letter recommending 100% release and all bond improvements have been completed to her satisfaction.
So all the work is done. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Michaud? That's it. No. Would any member of the public wish to be heard on this matter, on this bond release only? No? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Okay. It's a legal technicality. Actually, subdivisions require a public hearing for a bond release. Special permits don't, so. The next item is similar, 1550 North Benson Road, Nutmeg Lane, request of Sarah Camerota for 100% release of a $20,300 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an A zone.
Chairman, I hope to set a record for my shortest performance ever. Request 100% release of the bond, all the work's been done. I believe engineering has signed off on it, and I represent Sarah Camerota, and we appreciate the release of the bond.
Thank you, Mr. Rizzio. We have a letter on that?
Yes, we have received a formal engineering department confirming that all bonded improvements have been completed and engineering is
Okay. Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this matter? No? Okay, well, I'll close the public hearing.
The other guy was quicker.
Yeah, he was. Just to say, we have another matter, so we probably won't decide these tonight, just in case you're,
Thank you very much, folks.
Okay. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a zoning compliance, 222 Post Road, application of Connecticut Wellness Centers LLC to establish a medical marijuana dispensary in a portion of an existing building, premises in the design commercial district. I noticed we have a big crowd, so before I get started here, Attorney Whitney is there representing the applicant. I'll just recap where we ended up last time, because we heard this last time, and where I think we continue today. I do, before I go to the applicant, want to just note of the letters that we received, so I'm going to read a list of names that have sent us letters, just to make sure that the letters are on the record. I'm not going to read all the letters, but the names are on the record. Since that hearing, too, the applicant has submitted 3 documents that I'm aware of, too. One regarding projected business, one describing their planning team, and one talking about facilities in proximity. So after I note the letters, it's the applicant's turn to finish their presentation. They can talk about the information they've submitted any other new information you want that could be part of the presentation. After that, when the applicant says they're done and they conclude the presentation, and the commissioners can ask questions of the applicant again, we'll go to public comment. And for public comment too, last time there was a request for a representative of the police department to be here for this meeting to answer some questions because the applicant had spoken to the police department. So we're going to allow the police department representative to speak first as a member of the public that we can ask questions, and then it'll be open public comment, and those of you here last time know that everybody gets a chance to talk who wants to speak. We don't really have preset time limits as long as you're orderly, and we'll go one by one and speak at the podium. Ms. Whitney, before you start, I just want to note the letters, because I think you asked me last time to read them. So we received letters from Nestor Rodriguez, Tara Cook-Littman, Roseanne Sedita, Don Vidoli, Chris Mayo, Lynn Prowitt. We got a letter, too, from the applicant that was a copy of the letter from David Lipton to the property owners within 200 feet, and we received that the day after our last public hearing. That was actually presented at the hearing, and they just, I guess, submitted the actual letter for the record. And again, those documents. Attorney Whitney, you can.
Thank you. I'm Diane Whitney from Pullman and Comley, and with me tonight is David Lipton from Connecticut Wellness Centers. The plan that I intend to follow tonight, obviously subject to your readjustment, is for me to summarize the additional information that we've submitted since the last hearing, to summarize our application and to answer any questions you may have. And Mr. Lipton would like to speak. And then there should be plenty of time for the public to speak. And then I would ask that Mr. Lipton and I be able to summarize at the very end, after the public has spoken.
I'm sorry, I forgot. Yeah, there's opportunity for rebuttal. Yeah, once we close public comment, the public can't speak anymore. The applicant always has the last word. Absolutely.
Great, thank you. As you mentioned, we've submitted some additional things, and I didn't know whether you all wanted hard copies of them or not. So they are a copy of the letter that we had sent to everyone within 200 feet. Would you like copies of these things in hard copy, or I believe you got them electronically?
We did get electronic. If anybody wants one now, if you have them here, and maybe you want one, like I only printed one of the three. So if you do have some, you could just pass them up here, and we would.
There's also one of the...
Thank you. That's helpful. If anybody didn't print them, you'll have it handy.
The second thing was some frequently asked questions to the Department of Consumer Protection.
I got stuff. I gotta get them.
And this included some information that we didn't have last time. I had asked the department, and you had asked me, if there was a breakdown of the patients that have registered to use medical marijuana yet. And last time I was before you, there was not. I think almost immediately after that night, the department did release those figures. And most important to you is probably the fact that there are 240 patients registered in Fairfield now, and the total statewide is now 900.
And Fairfield was, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Fairfield, with its 240, was the largest cohort?
No, it was the second largest.
It was the second largest. What was the largest cohort?
I believe it was New Haven. Let me just
New Haven?
check. Yes, New Haven had 305.
305, okay.
Fairfield 240, Hartford 190, and then the rest are all considerably smaller. And those figures are as of September 16th. The third thing we submitted was a brief description of our planning team.
Look at this. They need to hand out. This lays out the parking. Yeah, I think that's what.
And the fourth thing, you had asked about a business plan. So we sent you some projected figures for our business plan. And then we also sent something that I don't think that you require, but the commission requires for our application, which is the distance from this site to a number of other uses, primarily schools, playgrounds, things like that. I know you got that electronically, but the hard copies are in color, and I think they're a little easier to see. So those are all the additional things that
I don't need the copy, so if you...
that we submitted to you.
If you don't, I don't need...
And if there are any questions about those, I know you've already read them all. So if you have any questions about those, we'd certainly be glad to answer them. Yes, sir.
Mr. Lessie?
Yeah, I received this email the other day as far as, what was it, playgrounds. And you didn't include one at McDonald's on the Post Road Circle.
Oh, I bet that doesn't show up in the Google Maps search because it's on a commercial site.
But when you call them and say, do you have a playground, they say yes.
I'm sure they do. It's
Yeah.
just, the Google Map search turns up public.
Well,
Not,
Google's not law.
no, it's not.
Okay, so,
So we stand corrected.
okay.
Could I just, the McDonald's, could I ask just about
Yeah.
the McDonald's? Is it the McDonald's in the circle across from the
Yeah.
liquor store?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to, okay. Sorry. Okay.
There is no requirement that a medical marijuana facility be any particular distance from any other use. But when you apply to the state for a license, they ask that you provide that information. So we thought it might be helpful for you to have it also.
But does the law say it has to maintain 1,000 feet from a playground, place of worship, schools, parks?
No. Originally, the regulations did say that. And then, I don't know if this is a direct cause and effect thing, but I know that the commissioner plotted out the city of Hartford and discovered there was no room at all. There are 52 schools in Hartford, and if you drew 1,000-foot circles around every school in Hartford, it was the entire city. I don't know if that's the reason they made the change, but they did make a change. So there is now no requirement that there be any set distance between these facilities and any other use. There's simply a requirement that you tell the commission how far you are from these uses.
Counsel, there was a link on the Department of Consumer Affairs website or Division of the State Consumer Affairs, which was like a PowerPoint for municipal officials. Do you have copies or anything like that available, printed copies that lay out I'm just curious.
All the
Because you
links?
said we have the link, no, not the forms in terms of application, it was dated September 19th, I think, and it talks about, it kind of breaks out the law in PowerPoint form over about 10 or 12 pages. I thought you had sent that link, I guess maybe it was someone else?
I know, I did send it to Mr. Wendt.
Went, right.
Yes,
But you don't have printed copies of that then?
I'm
Okay,
sorry, I
no
didn't
problem.
think to make copies of that. If you go on the website.
Right, no, you can find the link, and I
Yeah.
saw it online.
Sorry, that's one I missed.
Okay.
Any other questions about these materials?
Yeah, that's what I said. Yes, Mr. Jacobs.
I'd just like to go over some of the numbers, if you can just walk through it. What's your full square footage, or your retail square footage?
It's about 1,600 square feet for this little unit.
Okay, and that would be one parking space for every 200 square feet, so you're looking at eight parking spaces. You have 8 parking spaces available?
We believe we do. There are 58 in front of this one building.
Yeah, but the building consists, I'm sorry, Mr. Jacobs, go ahead.
The building consists of some other uses, right?
And then you're looking at the maximum generation, last page on the sheet you handed out.
The projected business?
Yes.
Yep.
On the last page. After years, you're looking at generating 8 trips per hour. So you've got 8 trips per hour. That would take care of your 8 spaces, so you have enough parking. Correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Sorry. Any other questions for the applicant on the additional information that they presented?
This is 8 trips per hour?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I'm in receipt of the letter, requested a business plan. I mean, it does sound a lot like the numbers we were talking about that time. I applaud you for putting in the maximum that can be handled, because I'm not sure we really know what the patient population will be. Again, it was 800 2 weeks ago, now it's 900. you know, I would assume more people are going to register from this program, and as these dispensaries get licensed by the state, perhaps even more, so,
Well, and that's certainly what the commissioner has said. He had a meeting last week for municipal officials, the one that Mr. Kennelly referred to, I think.
yeah.
Or Mr. Jacobs,
Yeah.
one of you. And people asked him that, at that meeting, you know, what do you project for the eventual population for this use? And he said, we are not projecting. And we really think that we can't, because our regulations are so much stricter than any other state. And we have a very small list of conditions for which you can get medical marijuana in Connecticut, much smaller than any other state. So to try and do a comparison with any of the other states really doesn't work. They don't expect as large a population as some of the other states have had. And they will be approving between 3 and 5 dispensaries in this first round. So certainly all 900 people will not be coming to Fairfield.
Yeah. Mr. Alessi and Mr. Kennelly both.
Attorney Whitney, I mean, it seems like you're backing off the 2% population that was told to us by the doctor and by the applicant 2 weeks ago.
You know, I am backing off that. That was based on projections from other states, and it wasn't our projection. It was coming from the Department of Consumer Protection.
So if we take 2%, which we figured to be 70,000, and let's knock in half to 35,000. And right now, we have to go with a number of 3 dispensaries per state, because we don't know if there's going to be 5, but we'll know there's going to be a minimum of 3. And if we have one in Fairfield, let's say, we're going to be pulling a lot of people from Greenwich up to New Haven, which are the 2 biggest populations, according to the list by the state.
Well, of course, we don't know what the commission is going to do, but I think it's reasonable to expect they're going to approve a dispensary in the New Haven area. They have said that their approvals, the location of the dispensaries they will approve, will be based not entirely, but largely on where the highest populations of patients are.
So basically, you're asking us to prove something on an assumption.
That's all we really have now, but we can certainly assume safely that there will be a dispensary in Hartford and one in New Haven and one in someplace in this area.
Well, you're talking, I mean, there's a whole northwest part of the state that's missing now. If we put the 3 in Hartford, New Haven, and Fairfield, we've got a whole other half of the state that's not going to have a dispensary.
Well,
so I got to assume that they're going to put somewhere in the northwest part of the state as well.
I would think they would too, although if you look at the numbers, they're very small.
But if that's, here again, this is a guessing game. So now we could just say, for that sake of argument, if they put one on the west side of the state, and we'll put one in Hartford, and now if we get one in Fairfield, which pretty much separate a third of the state, we're pulling a lot of people into this town. Especially if we see these numbers growing every week.
Well, at the moment, it seems like the 240 number is probably a reliable number.
At the moment.
At the
We
moment.
don't know where we're going to be next year.
No, we don't.
Okay.
And if in fact
And the
things...
240, I'm sorry, is only in Fairfield,
Jim
correct?
goes next.
Fairfield County.
Fairfield County. And like I said, if we have to be pulling from New Haven, we're up to 600? 500?
You know, theoretically, could that happen? Yeah.
Okay.
It could happen.
Okay.
I think it's unlikely, because I think given the rather large number in New Haven and Fairfield, they're going to end up being 2 dispensaries.
Yeah, but the state could also say Greenwich to Fairfield is almost the same distance as Fairfield to New Haven. Let's face it, it's right in the middle.
But you're not likely to make people go from Greenwich to New Haven.
Why not? If we have one in Fairfield, we're going to put another one in Greenwich. Now we're going to have Greenwich, Fairfield, and New Haven?
No, I would think, well, I mean, we're guessing.
I mean, no, but we have to look at it pretty much if we look at a map of the state. You know, we're going to say, okay, we're going to be pulling people from Greenwich to Fairfield, because we're going to have one in Fairfield. And is it likely we're going to put one in New Haven? We don't know. But if we don't, the people in New Haven, there's one 20 minutes down 95 in Fairfield. Basically, that's what we're looking at.
Could happen.
Okay. I think the answer is they don't know.
Yeah.
Mr. Kennelly.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Council, I want to, you provided us with this, and I turn my fellow commissioners' attention to this document. It's the application, projected business for medical marijuana dispensary that you handed out a little bit. I will tell you that myself and the Vice Chairman both expressed concerns that are now being echoed by Mr. Alessi about this seemingly open-ended issue, will be flooded. However, it seems, if you referenced your own document, Counsel, and let's walk through that,
Okay.
we might be able to kind of get a handle on what we're dealing with from a zoning issue dealing with traffic and visitors to Fairfield. So I'm going to go through this. Do you have this in front of you?
I do.
Okay, great. So let's try to do that. According to the plan that has been developed by your organization, it states that at startup, patients will be seen initially by one of the pharmacists by appointment only. The medical condition will be reviewed, and they will be counseled by the pharmacist to for the best product option to treat their condition. It's expected that the initial consultations will last about 30 minutes on average. With 2 pharmacists on staff, if the dispensary is open an average of 7 hours per day, 28 patients can be seen per day at the rate of 4 per hour, or 140 patients per week. The startup phase is expected to last between 3 to 4 months. Counsel, my question to you is, let's imagine a world where this 2% or whatever suddenly magically appears and everyone gets clearances from the state. If that occurs, will you change this schedule in your initial startup where you would see 28 patients can be seen per day, 4 per hour, 140 per week? Will you triple or quadruple? Will you somehow add more pharmacists or something? Or will you stay to this schedule? You can't answer the question, I understand, but how many the State Department of Consumer Affairs will allow. But this is your application, this is your plan. I'm asking you, will you, if there is this desire to have people come up from Greenwich or go wherever, will you deviate from this plan? Would you be concerned with us putting some sort of condition of approval that you stick to this plan, that in the initial startup phase of 4 per hour or 140 per week is what you expect this facility to do? What's your answer to that?
Would we deviate from it? To be honest, we couldn't deviate very much because it's a very small space.
1,600 square feet, you said?
Right.
Okay.
And there simply wouldn't be enough space.
Okay, let me ask you a question now regarding regular operation. Now, that's just the startup phase that we talked about, the first 3 or 4 months. So this is a time when there's counseling and all, but right now what we're talking about is a defined number, if we're concerned about traffic, of 140 of these visits per week for the startup. Let's talk about regular operation, and again, I reference to my fellow commissioners this document that is in front of you as well, Counsel. Following the startup phase, Connecticut Wellness Centers expect to serve a patient population of between 250 and 320 patients for the first year. It is planned that the dispensary will be open 5 days per week, 7 hours per day, and 2 additional hours one evening for a total of 37 hours per week, or 740 hours per month. If there is this explosion, or some theoretical explosion of people getting medical marijuana clearances from the State Department of Consumer Affairs, will your organization be dramatically varying from this, or will you stick to this?
Again, we could vary somewhat from this, but not a great deal. I mean.
And why is that again? Because of the space?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
let's continue.
And could I just state, the 2% that it was mentioned that I've backed off of, and I have backed off of it, because the Department of Consumer Protection has backed off of it. It was based on states which allow medical marijuana for a much wider variety of illnesses.
There are about 9 conditions, I understand, looking at the presentation. 11 laid out conditions that's in that PowerPoint
Yes.
that you didn't print out and hand out. But I would advise to everyone to take a look and link that. So in this initial regular operation phase, beyond the first 3 or 4 months, the first year, you assume 320 patients, each obtaining a month's supply of marijuana per visit, 20 working days per month. That's 16 patients would visit the dispensary each day, about 2 or 3 per hour. So again, if we're talking about this strictly as a matter of what a TPZ would deal with, parking, the answer, I think, here is that you're saying you're going to see between 2 or 3 patients an hour in this first year. Is that correct?
That's what we're expecting, yes.
Will you be wildly varying from this amount if indeed there is a push by the Department of Consumer Protection to issue lots more licenses on this space as it is?
You mean much more license for
For people who
patients?
need marijuana or a lot of...
Again, We can vary from this, because as you know, we've given you a
Right.
maximum that we can go to. We don't think we can go over the maximum at this site.
Okay. So in
So-
other words, the site, you feel to some extent, limits what you can do because you can only have so many people in the space. You could add a couple of hours at night or
Correct.
something, but that would limit. You'd have to go to another space.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
In the second, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just want to finish this up because it's just one more section.
Yeah, okay.
And this is the second full year of operation, Council. You're still with me on this? Okay.
Yes.
In the second full year of operation, Connecticut Wellness Centers expects that the patient population could double to a daily attendance of between 4 and 6 patients per hour for a total patient count of 640. The facility at 222 Post Road, working with only one and then, when needed, 2 pharmacists, can accommodate a population of 640 patients easily. Parking is available on the site, etc. That's the number that Mr. Jacobs referenced earlier, is that this 640 versus the 8 spaces. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what Commissioner Jacobs said to you when talking about does this have adequate parking, this is at the end of a 2-year cycle that you projected out of what your space can handle based on these hours that you expect to be in operation.
Yes.
Okay, so while you can't give us definitive answers about what statewide demand will be because you are one applicant to do a dispensary, you can stand by these numbers.
We believe so. We believe they're
Do-
reasonable.
Does your client have, would your client be resistant to any kind of conditions of approval that would require that this plan be held to during this initial 2-year phase, since this is something none of us have dealt with before?
Are you talking in terms of...
In terms of what you've projected here.
Well, but are you
Yeah.
talking in terms of a maximum number of patients or...
Right.
or
In
this-
other words, you're not going to hire 6 pharmacists and try to jam them into 1,600. You'd be willing to accept some sort of conditions of approval based on this. I'm just asking. You don't have to. I'm just wondering because,
And he needs to answer that.
yeah, he should.
How are you?
Sure.
My name is David Lipton. We've met before.
Right.
A lot of this is speculation.
Right.
We are trying to do our best in a new industry in Connecticut and help patients. Yes, the space is very small, it's limited. We can only do so much with that space. If, supposedly there will be 5 dispensaries opened at the beginning, so the numbers will be smaller at each location that is picked. And there will probably be something in Stamford as well, so the concern about everyone in Fairfield County coming to Fairfield probably will not come to that. But
Excuse me,
if-
Mr. Lipton, you cannot make that assumption.
No, Mr. Lessie, we're not going to do that.
It's a
Okay?
speculation.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Cannelli, too, you got to wind up. We have
I'm done.
People here
Okay.
waiting.
I'm done. I just
We-
asked him a
and
yes
then I'll
or
go
no
to you,
question.
Mr.
That's
Lessie.
it. I just want the yes
We're
or
not
no.
going to interrupt tonight.
The answer is yes.
Great, okay, thanks.
You're
That's
welcome.
all.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, go.
Ms. Jacobs.
I just have several questions. I've done a lot of research on this topic, and as far, I read that, could you just clarify again that the 2% figure is based on states that allow marijuana for medical, not for just medical, but also for recreational?
It's not...
There was a figure that was given that probably should not have been given at the last hearing, because
Right.
it's not a realistic number for the state of Connecticut. But there is a state that the commissioner referenced, and it was Colorado, that is not the recreational, that there was 2% of the population in Colorado that actively had their medical marijuana registration cards. It is not believed in Connecticut that 2% of the population will get their medical marijuana cards, namely for one main thing in Colorado, there's a medical condition called chronic pain, and 90% of the population in Colorado has a registration card for chronic pain. In Connecticut, there is no chronic pain as a medical, okay? So
Thank you.
there's a much smaller amount of patients in Connecticut who will qualify.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Suter, and then Mr. Lessie.
No, hang on, I have a
Oh,
couple.
you have more? Okay.
A couple more.
Okay, that's fine.
Also, with the, we just got a letter tonight, and I know I made sure you got it from Attorney Licamilli about maybe this would be
I think
better.
he's a pharmacist, not an attorney.
Pardon me, a pharmacist, I'm sorry. He mentioned about the money, the getting rid of the money and the hazard of crime, getting rid of the money. Could you just clarify how you're going to handle your cash proceeds, or maybe it's better off asking the police, I don't know.
They have a relationship with the bank, and they will not be taking home gobs of money or leaving it in the store.
Okay.
There's a regular banking relationship. And also,
Can I answer that?
one more thing. We're tag teaming here, sorry.
Okay, that's
We spend a lot of time together.
There was a statement made in one of the local newspapers that this was going to be a cash-only business, and I don't know where they got that. I would think it's patently obvious that that's not true.
Okay, great.
Yes, there will be debit cards and credit card transactions as well.
Something else, Commissioner
No.
Jacobs? Commissioner Suter?
Yes, you explained that initially there will be only about 5 dispensaries in Connecticut. Is there any legal reason why there couldn't be 50 or 100 dispensaries?
No, it's completely up to the commissioner, well, the Department of Consumer Protection. And they anticipate that there will be more as the patient demand increases. So it's 3 to 5 at the first round, but is expected to be more.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lessie?
No, Commissioner Wagner.
Commissioner Wagner?
Thanks. You were just talking about the cash. We got a letter from Representative Kupchak, who stated that,
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, we just got that today, and that's in the record too, so go ahead.
Okay.
It's
Thanks.
Representative Kupchak. You can-
Are you aware of that letter? No, I'm sorry.
late. It's okay.
It was late, it just came in today, and, she shared some thoughts, about how, the process in which it was passed in the legislature. There was some discussion about possibly having this through hospitals. That was obviously not carried forward. She states that she believes that the law, the legislature passed puts people who involve themselves, including our own commissioners, who have been charged to oversee the process, at risk regarding the federal law. She states that one of the things that came out in the hearings was that folks such as yourselves will have difficulty obtaining insurance because of the federal laws around that, and insurance companies obviously operate interstate, and so first question is...
I have insurance.
Okay. And I mean, it's important, right? Is that like a standard? What kind of insurance do you have? I don't even know what kind of questions to ask about the insurance, but...
I've already have all my insurance applications filled out. I have binders for when I'm ready to open the business.
Okay.
So
Well, can you describe what
I
kind
don't
of
have them in
insurance?
front of me. But they're basic general insurance, contents insurance, any insurance you would have for any other business, I already have in place for this.
Okay. There was some other discussion about banking, and so I've learned that in other areas of the country, dispensaries are having difficulties with banking relationships because interstate banks, of course, are subject to the federal laws, and the Attorney General has said that banks who facilitate the dispensaries are committing money laundering in furtherance of federal crimes. You mentioned you have a banking relationship, which I presumed, but it's important for us to get these facts out. So who's your banking relationship with?
I have a few different banks that I bank with, and
Yeah,
excuse me, do I? ask
yeah,
you what
yeah,
you're
public
in?
can
I'm sorry.
not
It's-
comment.
It's private
He
information.
can answer the question, he doesn't have to answer what the bank is.
Just
Well,
not to be evasive, but
Yeah.
I do not feel the need to give out my banking information.
Okay, the reason that it's relevant and the reason I ask is not to be, prying into, unnecessarily into private affairs, but we got a letter from, Michael Licamili.
That's the one Commissioner Jacobson referred to.
Thank you, yes. And it was interesting. 60 Minutes on September 15th had a segment on the dispensaries and also highlighted the difficulties with the banking relationships and insurance and also with credit and debit card transactions, suggesting that this would result in there being a significant amount of cash involved in the dispensaries. And so I want to get your thoughts on that.
Okay.
I'm asking you who you're banking with because I want to understand that it's a reputable bank. I want to understand that there's a relationship, that in fact it's not just gobs of cash, that in fact you have debit and credit card facilities in place, that you're going to, that this is not going to be a safety risk. The letter that we received states that, all of this, right, then results in large amounts of cash at pharmacy premises, makes all involved target for armed robbery, holdups, kidnapping, etc. You know, I'm just trying to understand feedback from you on those points.
I understand your concerns for safety in that regard. There are a lot of businesses that have cash, a lot of retail stores that have cash. There's security measures in place for when there is cash, but there will be banking relationships. And there have been issues in other states, but a lot of them have been resolved, and there are banking institutions that work with centers like my own. I'm just not going to give out the names right now. I'm sorry. You have to understand that.
Let me add, this is something that the commissioner has considered, and when he gave this session last week for municipal officials, he explained that when they were putting together the regulations, they looked at all the other states where this is legal, and there are now, I believe, 20 other states. And they didn't like any of their regulations. They didn't think any of them were strict enough. So they completely wrote their own from beginning to end, and I know you all have copies of those regulations. When it came to security issues, they said they were looking for the uses that presented the most issues from a security standpoint, and they decided that was liquor stores, drug stores, and jewelry stores. And so what they designed were required security measures that were infinitely stricter than any that you would put in place for any of those uses. And those are the security measures that we have to have, and as you know, they are burdensome and very, very complete.
Okay, and you know, the link is in the letter, and I frankly haven't had a chance to go through it. This letter just came in on the 23rd, but I am aware of what the letter speaks about in terms of the DEA ordering the armored cars and security services could not legally service dispensaries due to the violations of federal law. If that were to occur, what would be the plan to deal with the business at the dispensary? If that were to occur in Connecticut after you opened, how would you handle that?
I'm not sure that that's true for Connecticut, actually, because I know one of the questions that was asked by the commissioner is, can we use a service such as that? And the answer was, yes, you can. We expect that you probably will in Connecticut.
Okay, that's under Connecticut, the Connecticut regulations and the
Right.
Connecticut law, but this is the DEA, this is the federal government, which is regulating the interstate banking industry and not solely, you know, within our state borders.
In the last hearing, I know we provided a letter that was just released by the Department of Justice that is changed a lot of that. A lot of that was prior to August when that letter was written, and there's a lot more communication in the federal government related to states that do have medical marijuana programs and services starting to be provided, again, banking and other relationships.
So there was at one point?
There have been some issues of the 4 years, like in Colorado, there have been issues. I'm not going to sit here and say there have not been issues.
Right.
There have been, but we've been addressing them, and we've been talking with a lot of people about that, and
Okay, so at one point there was a disruption in the business of the dispensaries in terms of the banking and credit cards and all that, and now
In
you're saying
other
it's sort of
states-
move forward from...
in other
from there.
states, there have been issues when people had banking and one day they didn't have banking the next.
Right.
And
Okay.
you have that memo from the Justice Department in the binders that we
Yes,
provided.
no, I do recall that. That didn't speak to, that spoke to the enforcement of the drug laws with regard to growing and selling, and as opposed to the banking issues and cash and
But
credit
due
card
to that
transactions.
letter, there is now
Things have calmed down.
calmed down.
Right. Oh, okay, yeah, thank you.
I think we could, I know Commissioner Parker wants to speak, and then I have a question, then I'd really like to let the applicant wind up their presentation, unless there's...
Thank you. I've got like a
applicant- 'cause we have
20-minute speech to
lot
give.
of- You have a speech to make, too?
Yeah, 20 minutes.
Great, and we have a lot of members of the public that wish to be heard, too. So Commissioner Parker, you have something to add. You haven't spoken yet.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, earlier you discussed the use for chronic pain, and I'm sure there's a movement afoot to add that to the list of conditions. How likely is that to pass, and how soon?
I do not know anything about that.
I know a little.
Okay.
In Connecticut, there's a board of physicians that decides which conditions should be allowed for medical marijuana. Excuse me. And they have discussed chronic pain more than once and said no, because it is too subjective. You know, could that change in the future? I think it probably could. I believe, although I can't say with certainty, but I believe it requires a statutory change in order to add different conditions. So that would make it even more difficult to achieve.
Thank you.
No, I'm going to go, I mean, is it a long question? I was just going to ask about the, no, it's not. Because, I mean, we've got, no, well, why don't I ask my question, because mine was actually like something off of what you were going through, and then you can go. Okay, we talked about this being speculation. And I'm not here to debate, I just want to ask some questions about the letter that Mr. Kennelly walked through. Last time, Commissioner Jacobs asked, would you consider appointments only? You said no. This letter says, will be seen by appointment only.
Actually, I said yes.
Yeah, he changed it.
Oh, you changed it to yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my attorney said she had an issue with that. I said it would be fine.
Okay, and I recall like something the 2 per hour, and then me doing some mental math to come home to 320 visits per month, and somehow this business plan seems to jive with what I said, so, I don't know. This also says 3 to 5, and we're using could be 5, it could be 3 also, right? There could be 3 dispensaries in the state?
Could be.
Okay.
But their intent is to start with 5 dispensaries.
And we throw out that crazy number of 2% of the population, which is...
That's not,
Right.
that's not.
I understand.
You would forget
Let me
that,
just-
that would
let
be
me
good.
just-
Yes, sure, I'm sorry.
And this is all speculation, but there's 900 people on the list right now, right?
Right.
If 1/10 of 1% of the population signs up, 1/10 of 1%, not 2%, that's 1/20th. We'll put that crazy number out there. That's 3,500 people. Right there kind of puts you at your maximum pretty quickly.
We would
should
be
that
handling
happen.
about 700 patients.
You're thinking about 700?
If there was 3,500 patients registered and there's 5 dispensaries,
Okay.
you would put us about 700.
But if there's 3, then you'd get about 1,200. Just doing basic.
And again,
basic.
there's only so many patients we can handle at this location.
Okay, and that's a good point that you made.
Should that happen, if there is a need to service more patients, we would have to look at another space and deal with the commissioner's office about getting a new location that would be larger.
Right. You just have to understand, we're not comfortable with the we don't know and speculate. We any other application would come to here with, traffic counts.
Well, what we do know
And-
is in 1,600 square feet, the max we can handle is the max we've given you in this plan.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Okay?
You have another question, Mr.
I
Kennedy?
do, but I just quickly to follow up. But you did just give me a yes/no before, saying you accepted the idea of if we don't have anything and we want to have a condition that you work to this plan, like a restaurant with patron area. You could have a wildly popular restaurant that's serving something that suddenly everybody wants. But that doesn't mean if the restaurant doesn't have the patron area, somehow that allows us to allow them to suddenly put 80 tables out in the street. That doesn't work that way. So you are comfortable with this idea that you're working within these limits, you may face a condition? Yes?
I'm very, very comfortable with that.
And this is my question that I wanted to ask before, because I also share Commissioner Wagner's concerns regarding the danger of interruption of business, what happens if it doesn't work, issues related to cash flow. Let me ask you one thing. You also, I think, are involved in this business, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you mentioned you're also involved in the development of the growing of the marijuana that then might be distributed. Is that, I'm just asking if you might, or let me ask you, are you familiar with it, of the procedure?
We, as a group, have also formed a company to set up the production of medical marijuana as well, and we were approved in West Haven.
So you understand how the growing part of this plan works under state regulations?
Yes.
So my understanding on the growing end of this, for example, to show how the state requiring kind of seriousness of purpose, am I correct in understanding there's a $2 million line of credit or surety bond that is required of these producers, and they have to follow without violation over a period of time, I think it might be 2 years or something, but a period of time, and at the risk of forfeiting that $2 million. Is that correct? I read it online. You can find it right there, but it was on the Department of Consumer Affairs, the Division of Consumer Affairs website.
Yep. There is a $2 million cash bond, and it's for a 5-year period.
Right.
It gets released over time
Right,
based on performance, but yes.
So that's a way to kind of stop fly-by-night operators from getting involved. These are people who have to make a significant
That is correct.
commitment, so to speak, in the millions of dollars up front to be part of that piece of this rollout. Okay. I just want-
This is a very seriously regulated industry. It's being treated like a pharmaceutical enterprise from the production to the dispensing.
Anything further from the applicant?
There are a couple of
Go ahead, Diane.
misconceptions I'd like to clear up, and then I think Mr. Lipton would like to speak to you.
one more question.
Some things
Let her do her.
that were said last time that I'd just like to correct. A patient cannot take more than a 1-month supply. Somebody said people are going to be leaving here with bags of marijuana. They cannot do that. Comparisons to other states are not helpful. This is much, much stricter than other states. Comparisons to methadone are not relevant. These people are not recovering addicts. These people are sick people who need medicine. I told you it will not be a cash-only business. A second application, there is a second application, as you know, in Fairfield. The Department of Consumer Protection will decide which facilities get licensed. Your job, as you know, is simply determine whether the applications comply with your zoning requirements. No one thinks there will be 2 dispensaries in Fairfield, at least not for many, many, many years, certainly not right off the bat. Because this is considered a permitted use in this zone, the traffic is presumed to be compliant with your requirements, according to Judge Fuller's book on zoning. And that's all my random notes. Mr. Lipton would like to speak.
I just had one quick
One question, and then, because I'd really like to
Yeah.
get them wound up so we can get to the public that have
No, I
come here.
appreciate that. But to your point about, growing in the dispensing, how does the product, is it transported from the producer to the dispensary?
Yes, I can spend time. I'm okay up here. Okay. There will be a transportation schedule with a manifest schedule to the Department of Consumer Protection, and there will be a van with a locked container in the trunk with 2 armed guards driving, making the deliveries. So it's going to be very safe and secure. It has to be 2 people in the car, and 1 has to stay in the car at all times.
So that's
in the
regulated.
regulations.
Yeah, so.
The regulations are very security-oriented, as Diane said. They did this, I know, I don't want to be long-winded about it, but they did this to make sure everyone who was working was safe, anyone who was going to a dispensary, it's got safety in mind.
Yep. And so we heard about a 1-month supply for the patients. But approximately, what would that quantity be?
Okay. The regulations allow for patients to purchase up to 2.5 ounces a month. That's what's in the regulations. Probably not everyone's going to buy 2.5 ounces a month of medicine, but that's what's in the regulations.
Well, and approximately cost-wise, what would that 1-month supply of 2.5 ounces be?
Well, I, for one, we don't know what the price will end up being, but I think we talked about it once before, but
Got it.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
You, Commissioner Parker, do you have a question? I'm sorry.
I'm still a little confused on the number of people that will be using the facility. At the earlier meeting, you had a single doctor here who has already signed up 500 patients.
Okay. That doctor is not affiliated with me at all. She's just a doctor who's in the community who has registered patients for medical marijuana. The state has, as they release the numbers daily, there's about 900 patients registered in the state of Connecticut as of today. And people have been registering since October of 2012. So for a year, people have been registering, and there's about 900 people registered.
Yeah, that's why we differentiate between the applicant's presentation and the public. That Dr. Major came up and spoke as part of your presentation.
She did.
We don't let
She did.
public members just do so.
Well,
She
you
spoke,
called her
and
as a
your attorney
witness.
allowed her to speak, so that testimony's on the record.
Okay, what I did was, when there was a question about Marinol, I said, is there a doctor here who might be able to address that? Because I'm not a doctor, to address the difference between Marinol as a medical product versus medical marijuana.
Okay.
So I asked if there was a doctor, and that's what happened. Okay. So sometimes when you're on a plane and something happens and you ask for a doctor, you're happy. When a lot of doctors get up, that did not work out so well.
Okay. Are you going to sum up now?
I'm going to sum up now.
Okay, great.
Well, I just would like to thank the commissioners for allowing me to speak tonight and taking this very seriously, our last few hearings. And also, I understand there's a lot of people in the room who have a lot of objections to a dispensary opening up in Fairfield, so I would like this also to be for all of you, and I understand it's tense and no one wants something in their backyard that they feel might create danger or harm to their families or anyone else. But if you could just hear me speak just as far as education about the program in Connecticut and about the patients that will be getting medical marijuana, if that's okay.
Is it going to be long? Just trying to gauge. 15 minutes?
No, 5 minutes.
Okay, go ahead. Well, I'd like to let you speak uninterrupted.
Thank you. Yes. So I want to thank you all for allowing me to speak tonight. I thought it best that I speak to you about medical marijuana and let Diane handle any of these zoning questions that you may have. After leaving our last hearing, I thought that it was important that I communicate to all of you what is happening in our state with regards to Public Act 12-55, an act concerning the palliative use of marijuana. Excuse me, Mr. Alessi? Do you mind do you need to be on your phone while I'm giving this speech?
I'm reading the letters that we received today.
Okay.
All right?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
He cannot pay attention, it's okay.
Okay,
You could just read it. We're paying attention,
Okay.
Mr. Lipton. You could just address it to
Okay.
to me.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry if Mr. Alessi's annoying you,
Okay.
but he
The
can
act-
he can do whatever he wants.
Okay. I didn't know what the arrangement was.
Okay.
This act was unanimously enacted through the state legislature, and it was signed into law by our governor in June of 2012. After many hearings and legislative sessions, it is now 100% adopted as a law in this state, and medical marijuana is now classified as a Class II controlled drug. The law allows for residents with a bona fide doctor-patient relationship and with specific medical conditions like Crohn's disease, AIDS, cancer, glaucoma, post-traumatic stress disorder, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and epilepsy to register with the state for their medical marijuana card. This act offers our residents freedom of choice when it comes to their medical care. What does all of this mean, and why are we here tonight? We are here because freedom of choice and the law. The state legislature has provided a legal means for doctors to prescribe an alternative medicine to their patients. And those patients should have the ability to safely purchase their medicine. The Department of Consumer Protection, who is in charge of this program, has put forth the strictest and safest regulations of any state. The product is produced and packaged much like other pharmaceutical products sold at any drugstore in America. The DCP has put forth equally regulated and security-oriented policies for the production as well. These regulations ensure that the finished product will be free of contaminants, pesticides, molds, and be consistently produced to potency levels and percentages no differently than other pharmaceutical products. We have this law that was highly scrutinized. We have a regulatory agency that is promoting a safe medicine. We have a few production centers that have cleared local zoning and are applying for their licenses now. The final challenge for Connecticut residents is a medical marijuana dispensary to provide the medicine. This is a thoughtful law, and it has been brought forth to help our residents facing critical illnesses. When I came before you all 2 weeks ago, you had many questions, and they were all important. Why is this medicine? Why not the pill form? Who will qualify? And many, many other questions. I attempted to answer as many of your questions and alleviate all of your concerns. Tonight, my goal is to better educate you, everyone here, as to what this law means and how it can have a positive outcome for the people of this town and in this community. There is a reason so many states are signing into law programs for the use of this medicine. It helps. If it was found in the rainforest today, it would be on the front page of every magazine and talked about all over the news. Recently, Sanjay Gupta, who was nominated for the U.S. Surgeon General, and many other respected physicians have said they support medical marijuana. 21 states have approved and accepted the use of medical marijuana. New Jersey just approved its use for children with epilepsy. I look at everyone in this room, and I don't know if any of you have these medical conditions or you care about people who do, but this medicine is an option that we should all have the choice of using for our medical care. And thankfully, our state has put into place regulations and safeguards to make it a safe option. A personal story. I lost my mother last year to lung cancer. She did not have the choice to use medical marijuana to alleviate pain when she was suffering. If she were alive today, and there was a law allowing it, but no town would step up and provide access through a highly regulated facility for her use, I think that would be worse than not having the choice at all. I'm going to end with that. I think that's enough. You know, I started this thing as a business person at the beginning, and I've just become an advocate for it, and you know, I just feel strongly about it, and I think there's a lot of people who should have that choice. Thank you for listening to me and taking this so seriously.
Thank you, Mr. Whitney. Anything further, Ms. Whitney? Again, you'll have a chance for rebuttal after, anything that's said after the public gets a chance to speak, okay? Nothing else now. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we open up the public comment because we, the commission, asked for representatives of the police department to be here this meeting. I'm going to let them speak first, and then we'll open up to the general public. So is Chief McNamara? Thank you. Yeah. Chief, I thank you very much for...
Thank you very much for, Mr. Chairman and the commissioners for allowing me to speak. But I think really why I'm here is because you had questions of me. And I think I'll just start by saying that I did have a meeting, a sit-down with Mr. Lipton prior to, I think, your first meeting before that first meeting. And it was a very good meeting, a very informative meeting. And it left me with a lot of questions and some concerns, frankly. But I do want to say from the get-go that Mr. Lipton and I did have a very, what I felt to be a worthwhile meeting in an area that's pretty much unknown to a lot of people. I mean, obviously this is new territory for the state, new territory for your commission, and certainly new territory for the community and for law enforcement. So we did have a very cordial meeting, but at no point did I bless his proposal. I mean, we had concerns. We spoke of them. I brought up I asked about just to see how in tune I am with others. I asked about the methadone clinic analogy, and he set me straight with regards to that it certainly didn't operate like a methadone clinic, and that was the best that I could come with to determine what it was that I was looking at or asked to determine or have a decision on. So, but I come really today to really answer any questions that you might have of me.
Yeah, I would just start with, that exactly, and I do appreciate, I think the applicant represented that he had met with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but we didn't have a letter, you know, sometimes people say, well, I talked to the fire department or the police department and there's a letter in the file.
Sure.
So, and he reviewed the security plans with you for Connecticut Wellness Center. So, you know, we just wanted to be able to ask you questions about, did you review the security plans? What, if you had concerns, what were they? Just, and then I'll open up to the commission.
Well, let me start by one of the largest concerns that I have is that I before I even start with that, I want to say I'm not making a determination on the medical marijuana issue. I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to debate that. I'm not here to cast judgment on its effectiveness. That's not why I'm here. I have to look at it from a public safety perspective. And one of my biggest concerns is, and I know you've all spoken of the letter from the Department of Justice with regards to their determination of whether to enforce the marijuana laws in those states that have acted contrary to what they've done in the past with regards to those laws. And I don't know whether you realize it, but I'll point to the last paragraph on page 4, if there is a page 4 for you. If not, I can give you a copy of this. You probably do not have a page 4.
Which letter are you referring to?
It's a letter dated August 29th, 2013 from the...
Yes, that's tab E in the binder that was supplied to us, everybody. The second document after the blue page.
Yeah, no problem, no. Just want to make sure we're all referring to the same letter.
Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm.
The memorandum to all United States attorneys.
Yes, yes. from James Cole, Deputy Attorney General. And I just the beginning of that, I'll read, as with, and this is kind of a culmination of this letter, as with the department's previous statements on this subject, again referring to marijuana enforcement, this memorandum is intended solely as a guide to the exercise of investigative and prosecutorial discretion. This memorandum does not alter in any way the department's authority to enforce federal law, including federal laws relating to marijuana regardless of state law. Neither the guidance herein nor any state or local law provides a legal defense to a violation of federal law, including any civil or criminal violation of the CSA. Even in jurisdictions with strong and effective regulatory systems, evidence that particular conduct threatens federal priorities will subject that person or entity to federal enforcement action based on the circumstances. And again, that just highlights the top of it. This is a violation of federal law, and it remains a violation of federal law. Now, whether or not this memorandum basically says that the federal government chooses not to enforce it at this particular time, just because they choose not to enforce it does not mean that they can't at some point in the future enforce that law. That is of great concern to me. We have joint federal-state cooperation when it comes to enforcing both federal and state drug laws. Now again, I'm not commenting that the state went in this direction, but the federal government has not, and they've made it clear that although we don't choose to enforce it at this point, at any point in the future they can enforce that. Now, I'm not saying that they will, but keep in mind when you're talking about enforcing drug laws on a federal nature, that's all the people involved in the growing, distribution, financial support of that, those that benefit from that in any way that they benefit from the sale of that marijuana. It encompasses a whole bunch of people. They don't choose to enforce it, but they can enforce it. So that is obviously a big concern for me when we start talking about whether or not this establishment should exist in Fairfield.
Thank you, Mr. Studer. Yes.
Could the federal government also impose RICO Act violations on the sale of marijuana and production, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, basically a RICO Act, a RICO violation in federal law, and there I believe are probably attorneys in the audience that might be able to address that better than I can, but having been involved in a few RICO investigations, RICO basically is a racketeering charge. In other words, it's an organizational charge saying that I don't solely violate the law, I do it in conjunction with other people to violate the law. And drug laws have in the past been enforced effectively, specifically when it comes to drug distribution on a gang level, where rather than just get the street dealer off of the street, they look at a racketeering investigation to indict an entire organization for the distribution. So yeah, that does remain a possibility. And again, I'm not saying that they will do that. I'm just saying that they have not closed the door on the possibility of doing that.
What I'm really thinking of is that under RICO, assets can be seized, and I don't know if that's true under the other federal drug statutes, but that's a potential threat to any business, it seems to me.
Yeah, there are statutes in the federal government with regards to illegal assets obtained through the illegal operation of drug sales. Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Pinella? Thanks.
Chief, thanks for joining us this evening. We very much appreciate your assistance and cooperation in this matter. Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions. Chief, you mentioned that you have concerns about the possibility that there are 20 states that now, out of 50, that do have some form of legalized medical marijuana, Connecticut being one of them. And you are telling us tonight that you have concerns that at some point there might be a change in policy that might unleash a law enforcement effort against these fully in public view, completely with public records. In other words, if you had to go I guess what you're saying is you might be asked in a joint effort with the federal government to go arrest someone who operates the wellness centers. Is that what you're saying? I'm trying to...
I think what I'm saying is that the federal government has not closed the door that this is a federal violation. And I don't have any specific evidence to say that they would, nor that they would call upon us to do that. All I'm saying is that there is a door still open that says this is a federal violation of law.
And so I guess I'm asking is, what is your concern? I'm just saying, if I were the chief of police, and I was concerned that an activity that was debatable in terms of its legality, a local jurisdiction says legal, a higher jurisdiction says illegal. The local jurisdiction says, okay, this legal ruling that we said this is legal, you're going to be out in public, you're going to keep public records, you're going to show up between certain hours that are regulated. I'm trying to understand what your concern would be. It would seem to me if the federal government switched policy and it decided that the 20 states that are now providing medical marijuana were in violation of their law and they had a crackdown, it would seem to me that about the easiest law enforcement job you could have to stop this legal marijuana, as opposed to the illegal marijuana that I will tell you still seems to be in everywhere, all of the high schools in Fairfield, you would have a very easy time. Maybe I'm not a law enforcement expert, but it would seem like you would have a very easy time walking into the wellness center, arresting everyone, getting their records. Why would that be a concern to you? I'm trying to understand why this potential shift in federal policy is a concern for you. What as the local law enforcement officer in Fairfield concerns you about this?
Well,
What would happen?
I think it's not necessarily what would happen. And certainly, I don't want to go and arrest anybody from the wellness.
Well, if you were asked to,
But-
right,
well,
the federal
yeah,
government in a
and-
joint task force.
Well,
Right.
yeah, and
Right.
again, you've expanded from where I'm at. What I'm saying is you've asked me for what my concerns are. My concerns are not necessarily, this still remains on some level an illegal activity. And I think
Right.
that, if you want me to come here today and not discuss that doesn't concern me, it concerns me. And from an illegal perspective, it concerns me.
Well, I don't want to, I guess what I'm saying is okay, you're concerned that an activity that is still considered in part by the federal government to be illegal is being carried out, is going on, is what you're saying. Because that's what it is?
Yeah, I'm not, I don't have to make this decision.
Right.
And I'm coming here and you're asking for my opinion.
Right.
And I think, having 25 years of law enforcement, that little portion of it concerns me. And the reason I bring it up is because it was brought up to say that the federal government has somehow now acquiesced.
Right.
And they haven't. And that's a decision that this board has to make. You're asking me my concerns. I can't get into the nitty-gritty of...
Sure. No, I wouldn't ask you to.
David Lipton is now making it so easy, I can't wait for the federal government to come in because we're going to make the best marijuana arrest in the town.
But I'm saying it wouldn't be a concern to me. If I was I'm just saying I'd like it. It would be easy.
I don't have the luxury of you're asking me my opinion, and then you're saying that that's kind of an odd opinion to have.
No.
I don't have the luxury of saying legal versus not legal. This is on some level still an illegal operation.
Okay.
And the fact that there is still, maybe this is a better perspective for you, the fact that there is still not clarity globally on legal or not legal concerns me.
Okay.
Because once you have that not clarity of mission, in other words, it's not clear. The state says it's legal, federal government says it's not legal, that concerns me. If tomorrow the federal government came down and said that medical marijuana is legal, then obviously that wouldn't concern me. And I wouldn't lose sleep, boy, they shouldn't have done that, they should have done it. It's not my decision to make what's legal and not legal. But this lack of clarity on a federal level versus a state level concerns me, because that's that wishy-washy kind of a thing that we're in right now.
Well, here's the thing. As the chairman points out, we really have to deal in definitive issues. Our power actually accrue our power from the state, the all-town plan and zoning commission. So let me ask you a couple specific to the town questions. You had an opportunity to discuss this with the applicant, his security procedures, et cetera, how he would guard his product, how he would guard his cash, I guess, and all this kind of stuff, the security on the facility. My question to you is were his security procedures, which I understand are mandated by the new state laws allowing this, were they in any way lesser than the security procedures that are required of standard pharmacies that prescribe and offer to the public highly addictive drugs like Percocet or antidepressant medications that can have significant cognitive impacts on individuals? Is his security in any way, in your view, lesser than what is now provided through standard pharmacies? From your professional opinion as a law enforcement officer, what he described, is it less?
I don't think it's less. I mean, having a cursory observation and discussion about it, this was not a looking specifically at a floor plan. I don't think at one point we had the floor plan in mind and how we were going to work that out. So, I mean, having just a cursory discussion on it and not to dive into the regulations as a whole, I think that it's comparable, and not any less, and certainly not any less, no.
Okay, so what he's describing appears to be comparable to what is now provided by pharmacies in terms of security. you would say?
I would say so,
Okay.
yeah.
Let me ask you about, here...
How much longer is
I
this
have
going to
one-
go, Mr. Kennelly? 'Cause I
I'm
want
sorry,
to-
just questions.
It's a lot of questions, and...
This is the second one. Here's my third one, and I'll stop on the third one. Chief, you could stop me now, Mr. Chairman. I would just ask your indulgence for a
wanna let
third
other
one.
people-
Absolutely.
you know-
I just have one more question, and I'll be done, like Columbo. Chief, I wanted to ask you, by somebody said I was laughing. I apologize for even the slightest bit of levity. This is a serious issue. We're very concerned, every one of us. I have 3 small children, 2 in middle school. So please, anyone who commented, I want you to know that I take it very seriously. But the third question I had for you was regarding this business of crime and the nexus, the potential nexus for crime, and anytime you have a controlled substance that is offered to the public and the impact of crime. Now, we don't know what any kind of, we don't have case history for how this will be played out in Connecticut. But let me ask you, you have access to the crime statistics for Fairfield. You're well aware of it as somebody who every day has to deal with where to allocate your resources. Do you have to allocate additional resources? Is there a higher level of incidences of muggings, of personal theft at standard pharmacies now that offer very strong narcotic medications? Do you find that do you have those kinds in your reports? Is that something you have to put extra concerns? Are more patrols put toward pharmacies where there's the potential for people being mugged for their potentially resaleable, addictive, or powerful narcotic drugs?
I can't say whether there's more or less. Certainly, a pharmacy would be considered a high area of attention, similar to another area that may be the victim of what you're talking about. I think the other concerns with pharmacies come into the fraudulent obtaining of prescriptions and the distribution of those to those that shouldn't have it. So it certainly is a concern of ours. There's a lot of unknowns, so I can't really talk specifically about this type of operation. I mean, I know that it's being compared to a pharmacy, but it's not a pharmacy. It's not, and we don't really know what it is because there's a lot of unknowns with regards to what the impact really truly is going to be. I know there's been cases out west, and there's probably been cases out west and in other areas where homicides occur elsewhere, but I know at least one incident where a homicide has occurred, a double homicide did occur at one of these dispensaries. That concerns me. Obviously, it should concern me, and it does. And there's a lot of unknowns with regards to that. These are opinions, and the reason that they're opinions is they're based on things that I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns about this. I don't know the impact of crime when you have an illegal substance that is dealt in areas illegally that is now going to be in a location legally. I don't know the impact of that. I don't know whether that will drive others to the area that shouldn't be there. I don't know whether that will drive street dealers to the area. I don't know, because it's unique. I can't buy marijuana legally, yet there are others that can, in a location that people will become aware of. I don't know what that trend is going to drive. I don't know what's going to happen with that. And so, some of your questions that you have of me and others, and you're all left kind of wondering, well, what if? Well, what if? I don't know. We don't have any in the state, and so some of these questions are very difficult to answer.
Can we have somebody else? We have a room full of people. I mean...
the only thing I was asking is there a higher number of incidents around strip malls that have drugstores? Do you have higher levels now of crime in those areas? That's right. That's a definitive question.
Mr. Cannella, that's the last question, okay? We have other commissioners that want to speak. The chief has been good enough to come out here, okay?
Yeah.
Mr. Wagner, you're next. Mr. Parker, Commissioner Parker, you had a question as well?
I will be brief.
Brief is good. See if he asks your question.
Thanks. I will be brief, and thank you very much for your thoughtful answer to that last question. I thought that was well spoken. I want to talk, if I could, just about the specific location. We're a zoning board, right? There's an application for this facility in a specific place on the Post Road, which is proximate to the Bridgeport border. Do you visit this site? I mean, you're all over town. You know town really well. Do you think that this is a good location for? Let's assume hypothetically that this is going to happen. Let's just I'm not taking that as a foregone conclusion, but if you had to put it somewhere, do you think that this type of location in this area would be as a good, safe location for this facility? Or do you think that another place would be a better, more safe place for an establishment like this? And, you know, let me just give you a little example of what I'm trying to get at. In the first hearing, I had suggested that I thought, wow, it strikes me that this could be dispensed like at the pharmacy. You're getting a prescription, and you know you should go to the pharmacy and get it filled if that's the way it's going to be. There were answers from the applicant as to why that is not the case. Okay. Well, then I suggested, well, what about hospitals? Maybe you could have a separate place in a hospital where it would be in a controlled environment. The applicant gave me reasons why that was not an appropriate thing. It got debated in legislature, et cetera. At the end of the day, the Connecticut state is telling these applicants that they need to find a place to make an application to a local zoning authority to get permission to open up a dispensary. They chose this location on the Post Road. It's a strip mall. It occurs to me that an office in a medical building, let's say, in a more controlled environment where there are other medical offices, like in a high-rise where there may be several stories and there is security for other medical facilities might be a better location. So I'm trying to get your sense as, from law enforcement in terms of safety of the town and suitability of this particular location for which we have to make a determination.
I can't, I don't think it's right for me to say, which place is better than another place. Some of my concerns would still remain, but I know that in our discussions, one of the discussions one of the topics that we talked about was just that fact. Are there not locations that are more sterile, more isolated, that are more of a medical building type of a thing, a more commercial area that would be better suited, not having across the street a neighborhood. So I did discuss that because we thought that same thing when we were sitting down talking. Are there better, more suitable locations for this, whether they're Fairfield or not? Those are your decisions. That would allow for that more off the street kind of a thing. I mean, this is a strip mall that you're right on the corner, people going in, people going out, as opposed to the the medical aspect of it that it was that it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
That was one of my questions on it too. So to answer your question, did I give thought to the fact that this might be suitable in another location, given the medical aspect of it? Yes, I had those same questions with regards to distribution at a pharmacy, at a hospital. Are there better ways that the state could have regulated this and made it different? Yeah, and I've been told those same answers they can't. So,
okay, but then assuming that it's just going to be in a a selected commercial leased environment, do you have an opinion as to whether it would be more suitable in a medical office building as opposed to a strip mall in this location on the Post Road? Do you think it would be safer?
Well, it's hard to say whether or not it'd be safer, because I think that any time you can, do I personally think it would be safer? There may be more layers of access to it. In other words, there's people going into the medical building that may not be going in to get marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
They may be going in for other reasons. Maybe that would make it a little safer. There's a lot of unknowns. I mean, there's a lot of concerns about the safety of it because I don't know what the ramifications are. Okay. It doesn't take into account the safety with regards to transportation. I had those questions too. There's questions of transportation and how secure this is to be transported. And it's easy to say that, yes, we're going to do this, armed guards, but I don't know how that's going to work in hands-on, and we don't have anything in the state to guide by. We do not have any dispensaries in the state of Connecticut that we can go and look and say, this is the projected traffic, this is what we found, and what we found, it's better in a medical building because of these problems that are occurring. So I don't really know.
Okay. One more question. From a public safety law enforcement perspective, in terms of crime rates, do you, and sort of drug activity illegal drug activity. Is this area of the post road a higher density for crime and drug activity, illegal drug activity, as opposed to other areas of Fairfield? Is my question clear? It might not be.
Yeah, I think it's fairly clear, but maybe just try to explain it to me a little better, what you're asking.
So, are there places in Fairfield that have a higher crime rate or a higher drug activity, illegal drug activity than other places in Fairfield? And so I'm trying to sort of drill down into, if we've got to identify a location where one of these facilities is going to exist, do we want to put it in a higher crime area or a lower crime area? Do we want to, is it better for this to be in a place where there is known illegal drug activity or in a place where there isn't? Is this place that they have made an application to place this facility a place where the police department knows of a higher crime rate or of illegal drug activity in that area? That's what I'm driving at.
Okay.
As opposed to another location.
It's very difficult to answer that, and it's a good reason for it, because I don't think that there is one area of Fairfield that is a very high concentration of that, and thankfully we don't have that. We don't have a spot in town that is really drilled down and it's a high concentration of crime activity. So, I mean, do we see crime activity on the post road? Do we see some of the motorist activity? Sure, but we don't have anywhere in town where it would be better placed than another place.
No, fair enough. That was my question, and you answered it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Alessi, were you next? Commissioner Parker after that?
Chief, thanks for coming tonight.
Yeah.
I know it's getting late. You said before about the legally and illegally, and I'm just concerned that we're going to have this establishment here, and we're going to see some sort of influx. I mean, one lady came last week, and she's concerned about safety. We know about the incidents of kidnappings and murders or whatever's gone on and robberies with these places around the country. And it is new here. And one of the women was concerned about her safety because she lives behind it. And what is the possibility, or can it happen, that we're going to start seeing illegal activity and drug dealers coming around this place that I could sell it cheaper than the store? Buy it from me. I mean, is that a possibility?
You know, as word gets out, it's a possibility. I mean, you know, it's a possibility that there may be some drug activity associated with illegal drug activity. Sure. I mean, you know, it's possible that, you know, yeah, I mean, there's going to be attention drawn to this. It's new, and it's selling what is legal in some regards, but illegal in other regards. And I know I'm not really explaining it well enough, I don't think, but that's one of the other issues, is that it's legal, but it's illegal. So there is a demand illegally for this too. And now we're saying that legally people can get it here. I think that's what you see in this California incident, is that it's a legal establishment, and there are people who want it illegally. They can't obtain it, so they choose to go in and do it illegal.
Is there a chance of, like you said before, in the pharmacies, fake prescriptions for this?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I had a couple concerns with regards to the forged prescriptions, the fraudulently obtained. So, you know, let me just start by saying I had some wonderful conversations with Mr. Lipton, and heart-wrenching, tug-at-your-heart conversations with him, and legitimate conversations with him. So I just want in no way for you to think that I am anti-medical marijuana, and I think you all understand that to begin with. This is not me saying that, you know, look, the law is the law, but again, from the law enforcement perspective, that's why I come to address these. These conversations that I had with David were touching. They absolutely were, and that's the decision of the state to make medical marijuana for that purposes, and there's medical proof that it happens. And so I totally forgot your question, but I wanted to kind of lay that out there.
Fake prescriptions.
Yeah, one of the concerns I had, and one of the discussions I had with Mr. Lipton was about that fact, was the fact that, you know, we are concerned in pharmacies, and we know that pharmacies, people obtain prescriptions illegally. And one of my concerns was other people trying to get it. kids trying to get it illegal, or even adults trying to get it through this now legal means of getting it, yet utilizing other means to do it. Sure, there's a concern of that. I wasn't really happy with the answer in our discussions. It still raises
What
concerns
was the
to me.
answer?
It was, again, these were just casual conversations, but they are conversations to have, and I wasn't happy with the answer, and I can't verbatim do it, but it wasn't solid to say that's bad and we shouldn't have it happen. It was more that, well, they're getting it illegally somewhere else. So wouldn't it be better that they get the quality, the regulated stuff? And certainly David can clarify if we had those discussions, and he's going to talk at the end.
Yeah.
But, so I may be mistaken, but we've had that one conversation, and it was a concern of mine. It was legitimately a concern. This is going to be a regulated product, regulated by the state, and so imaginably it's going to be more pure and better, and doesn't have all the additives that the street marijuana would have to it. So my discussion was, I'm concerned about how that would happen, and I wasn't really happy with the answer of saying, well, this is a better quality, wouldn't parents be more happy with that? And again, I'm not saying that he encourages that from happening, and David, we can have, you certainly come up to correct me, and I mean that. But it's important that these are discussions, and this is just a concern that I have through the discussion. Now, he did tell me that the state was regulating the marijuana, that it was going to be packaged and it was going to be properly scanned. But I have concerns about that the legal product will fall into the hands of those people that shouldn't have it.
Now, we've heard so many different numbers, and nobody knows the numbers. They don't know the number of people, they don't know the numbers of dispensaries, but do you see a traffic issue that's going to come before this town in the next few years, especially on the post road?
It's hard to determine traffic. It's hard to say, whether or not that the numbers are what they are. If you're talking 4 cars in an hour, is that going to have an impact? But I don't know 3 to 5 dispensaries throughout the state. I don't know whether that'll have that much of an increase in traffic. I just don't have the answers for that, because we don't know what a dispensary is going to drive.
Is that it, Mr. Leslie? Commissioner Parker?
Thank you. Yeah, just a few follow-up issues on the question of your anxiety about the federal law. Is that based on a fear of possible litigation and liability for you personally and for the town and for the department as an issue?
No, I'm not worried about personally being, you're asking me my opinions on it. These are your decisions that you have to make. It's a concern that it is still illegal. And, whether I'm personally liable for any of those conversations, I'm not.
And then my second area of inquiry would be, I've spent time at the site. I mean, because I think what we're asked to approve a site, basically. And when I spent time there, I find that when you drive up into the strip mall, that it's absolutely apparent where it's going to be and what it is. But when you're on the post road, it's obscured, it's higher than that, and if you have a police car driving by, it wouldn't be as visible as it would be if you put it downtown near public transportation and near the police station. Were this to be placed on Reef Road, would you consider that a safer site?
One would think that would be a safer site, and unfortunately, we all know that within eyesight of the police department, we lost 2 dear members of this community, the Donnellys, in a jewelry store robbery. So I'd be reluctant to say one place is safer than another. We certainly, would like to think it's safer, but we all know that we have had crime in that area.
Good point. Thank you.
Any I have just a couple questions. Chief McNamara, again, appreciate you coming here. Just, Mr. Lipton, did he review the security, because the security is mandated by the state, how these are secured?
Yeah.
Did he review that with you? Did you get a feel for how the security would work internally to the?
What we mostly talked about, and I bring it up only because it was mentioned before, we mostly talked about the security at his other location. And I just wanted to clarify that we talked about his other location. In other words, the location in West Haven, that unrelated to this, but he kind of laid out his security model in West Haven and utilized that as an example for what it might look in Fairfield.
Okay. And again, I don't want you to ask you to speculate anything. I just wanted to know if they discussed. And then in the state regulations, there's a section about transportation of marijuana. Are any of your concerns about the fact that this will be transported to the facility? It's got to be, only marijuana, just vehicles come in, just that type of safety? Do you have concerns about that? I mean, I think some of us did, and just wondered if those were yours also. But the transport of marijuana, a truck filled with marijuana?
Yeah, I mean, that concerns me. Yeah. Sure it does. Concern me, and I don't lose sleep over it. I mean, this is a concern. That's what you want me to be concerned about.
Yeah.
And so that's why I have these concerns, because that's what you hope the police chief would have. So the transporting of marijuana from one location to another, it definitely concerns me. Because there are those people out there, and again, I'm not doom and gloom, but there are those people out there who plot and pray and want to find ways to commit crime. So they will or may, I'm not saying they will, I'm not doom and gloom, but they may say, hey, that's the truck that carries marijuana from this location to that location. The state has put in regulations of it, but that obviously is a vulnerable time and a vulnerable concern for us with regards to the marijuana, to make sure that if it's utilized for people who are legally able to have it, that it gets in those hands and not in the hands of others.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's Chief McNamara. Sorry.
You promoted me.
Thought it was the city police department. Yeah. I called you Commissioner.
No, I know.
That's okay. Any other questions? No. Well, thank you. Do you have anything else?
I just want to say one other thing. I've already talked about that, but I do want to give Mr. Lipton a fair opportunity to clarify if our conversations with regards to, I want to make sure that our conversations were kind of casual conversations. So at some point, I would hope that you would clarify that with him, because I don't want to portray it that he wants the youth of our community to have marijuana. So I know he doesn't want that, but I want him to clarify it. That was just a concern I had in the conversation.
No, I think you've answered all our questions honestly and forthrightly, and I really appreciate that. Does anybody else have questions for Chief McNamara while he's standing? Okay, thank you. If not, I know we have a room full of people. Thank you very much, sir. We have a room full of people. Again, we go to public hearing. I don't know if I went through the rules last time, those of you that were here last time, but you just raise your hand to be heard. We don't have a preset time. One at a time. I'll call on you one at a time. Everybody will get a chance to speak. You what?
I'm not getting up, I'm getting water.
Right, you're not, yeah. The applicant can't speak in this, and he can't, and the commissioner shouldn't ask you questions either. So just come up to the microphone, state your name, address, if you will. And again, you can ask us questions should be directed to the commission. You can speak in favor of the application, against the application, or just make some comments. So who wants to go first? That gentleman in the back? Again, we have 11 o'clock curfew, and it is my desire to finish this tonight. So,
Hi, my name is Bruce Ryan. I live at 439 Beach Road. I'm a RTM member of District 10. First, I want to just make the statement, I'm adamantly opposed to this in the town of Fairfield. I have received numerous emails from people in my district, which this facility is to be located if approved, advocating against it, not one for it. I think there are many concerns that have been touched upon here. Safety of children in the neighborhood, potential crime escalation, the possibility of, well, forget about it, it's not a possibility, that the law being violated federally could have ramifications that would hurt the town. There is nothing positive in this proposal or business venture that's going to benefit Fairfield, Connecticut. And I urge you all to vote against this. Thank you.
Okay, and that's okay too, but that keeps it going. Thank, this woman in the front, and then you, sir.
Thank you. My name is Leslie Geary. I live at 287 Shoreham Village Drive. That's about 528 feet from 222 Post Road, according to MapQuest. I'm the mother of 2 boys who are 8 and 10, so I'm here as a mother. I'm here as a property owner. I'm sorry Mr. Lipton isn't here, but I too lost a family member to cancer. To me, this is not a referendum about cancer, okay, or helping people. I respect the rights of people to have access to the medical care they need, but this is about sane zoning, okay? Frankly, the proximity of the facility and my home alarms me greatly. Okay, I have very serious concerns about crime, my children's safety, their health, and frankly the impact it's going to have on my neighborhood, the value of my home, which I saved for many, many years, and the character of Fairfield. Okay, first safety. You know, as the chief of police has indicated, Fairfield, you know, is not immune to crime. We have had its share of bank robberies. You know, the Bank of America just down the block a couple weeks ago. And unfortunately, merchants have been killed in their shops, you know, in jewelry stores. I mean, we have seen gun violence. We have seen gun violence. And crime is not hypothetical. And I am very, very scared of a facility that everyone's know there's going to be marijuana there, and attracting crime and attracting guns in a place that's 520 feet from where I'm raising my children, where children in my neighborhood are outside, where they're on bikes, where old people or senior citizens are there. I mean, this is just crazy. Okay, we have 35 young children on my block alone, okay? They play catch outside. They ride their bikes. Am I supposed to bring them inside? Okay, the bus stop for our high school students is across the street from the dispensary. Now, it was commented that Hartford, I guess they negated or got rid of language that would set some sort of footprint, 1,000, whatever it was, because they would have no room for them in Hartford. And I know a bus stop isn't a school, but come on, this is where children are. This is where high school kids are. And Mr. Kennelly, I'm really, really glad that you are concerned about the well-being of our children. All right. What happens when something goes terribly wrong at the dispensary? When someone is shot or held up across the street, or worse, they are chased onto our block. I am not being alarmist. This is a possibility. The truth of the matter is there have been a lot of questions. No one can sit here tonight, no one, and give me the assurance that I need. Mr. Lipton has said that he has insurance. Does he have insurance in case my child is killed? In case my son is shot and is paralyzed? Does his insurance cover that? Okay? Traffic. Okay, you know, no one knows how many people are coming or going, but I can tell you right now that traffic is a nightmare. You know, there's a series of traffic lights. If I go out Post Road and I want to go left, especially in the morning during rush hour traffic, I have to wait. Sometimes I wait 3-4 minutes just to be able to dart across. Or I go right and then I go left and a U-turn. You know, I've gone around Riverside. You know, and then if you go right towards the new train station, there's a series of lights. I mean, traffic is an issue, okay? You know, I don't know, supposedly you're talking about 3 to 5 dispensaries in the state. Personally, I think it's going to be more than that. But let's say it is just 3 to 5 dispensaries. We are going to see people, okay? I personally don't believe our roads can handle it. There are health issues, okay? There's the law and then there's a reality. Okay, yes, people may need medical marijuana. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to pass judgment. But as Mr. Kennelly said, there's marijuana in our schools. There's marijuana in our town. And this is a place where everyone's going to know about it. Right? Maybe people aren't supposed to take their marijuana, which they've obtained legally, and you know, smoke it right in their car. Maybe they're supposed to take it home. But you know what? Who's going to enforce that? Who's going to be driving high across the street or coming in? You know? I don't know if they're allowed to sell products, other products like food, but can they eat that there and then leave high? I mean, And what do the DARE officers tell our children? What do I tell my children that, say no to drugs except for when you're at 222 Post Road? All right? I'm sorry. The character of my neighborhood will be hurt. Property values will be affected. I went to school at Berkeley. My family still lives in the Bay Area, and I know people have said tonight that comparing it to another state is sort of besides the point. But you know what? I have seen firsthand how these facilities have ruined neighborhoods, okay? How the use of pot in schools has skyrocketed, how eventually these facilities, at least in California, were being opened up next to schools. And this isn't just my opinion. That was the opinion of thousands and thousands of California residents who got fed up, and they did turn to their attorney generals for help. And we talked about the enforcement, or the chief talked about, the federal government could enforce. And you know what? There were 4 attorney generals in California, and they said, you know what? We are going to start adopting stricter enforcement actions because this is getting crazy. And they have closed up some places, and I just think that this is something that we need to be aware of. Someone, you can see interviews. There's a woman named Melinda Hess, and she was one of the attorney generals, and someone said, well, why would you do this? And she said, and this is a quote, "In the view of the people that write to my office and call my office, the demand for medical marijuana in California is fueling an industry that is ruining parts of the state. I know Fairfield is not California, and I know we don't have a model, we don't have answers, but I think we would be foolish not to at least look at what might be a possibility." And as someone who has spent many years in the Bay Area and whose family is still in the Bay Area, I've seen this. This is not Chicken Little, all right? Like most of us, I'm busy. I work full-time. I'm a parent. I'm a soccer mom. But I learned about this dispensary a week ago, and I spent a lot of time being vocal. And I've had people thank me. They had no idea the dispensary was being proposed, and I was told, well, it was in the paper. I don't know, maybe it's my fault. I probably should read every little public notice in the paper. I don't.
You
Guilty as charged.
came and you got to speak, though.
Okay,
it
my
worked.
point is, I'm not here, but I'm appalled. Some people have taken it personally. I don't want, the truth of the matter is I don't want this to do with any of the dispensaries in this neighborhood. This neighborhood is our residential, our little block. Our block is right across the street. I do think it's going to be a danger. These are not typical businesses. These are not pharmacies. The thing is, when people leave pharmacies, maybe they have drugs or maybe they just have Halloween candy. When people leave these dispensaries, everyone knows what's in their bag. Okay, they are going to be target. There's so many questions. At the very least, if Fairfield decides as a community that this is something that should happen, then I just think we could perhaps slow down and say, is there a saner, better approach to this? Are there better places to put it? Maybe closer to the highway, closer to town. Maybe perhaps 528 feet, from Southport, the middle of Southport, or from Mr. Kennelly's home, or Mr. Lipton's.
Okay, Mrs. Carey, are you almost done? Are you almost done? We have a lot of other people that want to speak.
Yes, I am almost done. I've listened a long time, and I'm sorry,
Yep.
and I'm angry, and I'm scared.
We understand.
Okay,
I guarantee we understand everything you
I'm not the only one
said.
scared. So this is, to me, in the end, not just a matter of zoning. It's a much bigger matter. And I know it's landed on your laps, and you maybe didn't ask for it. So I'm asking you to be thoughtful.
Thank you, Mrs. Geary. No questions for the public. Leslie Geary, Shoreham Village Road. Sorry. Yeah. 287 Shoreham Village Road. She gave her name and address. Sorry. Yes, this gentleman in front. Yeah, sorry. We're going to go in order. Let's try to keep it under 5 minutes. I want everybody to get a chance to speak. Short is good.
I'll try to keep it under a minute.
I guarantee you, make a quick point, we'll understand it well.
1 minute. Okay, I'm basically going to reiterate a lot of what we've already heard, including last speaker,
And your
which
name,
is...
sir?
Huh?
You give your name?
I'm sorry, my name is Gray Byrne. I'm at 134 Shoreham Village Drive. I also have a daughter, and what we're hearing consistently tonight is a lot of I don't know, I'm not sure, possibly, maybe. Clearly, this is an experiment. Unfortunately, it's an experiment in our neighborhood. I'm not sure that this area, like others have stated, is the appropriate area to conduct an experiment, if perhaps it could be a hospital, if perhaps it could be a medical building. These are the exact things that my wife said. Perhaps that is a better place to start. If 2 years down the road, things have gone very sour, where does that leave us? What is our recourse? Exactly. So that's pretty much it. I'm sure that's going to be repeated again. I'm not in favor of this in this place. I have no problems with medical marijuana. If the state had legalized it in general, there would be nothing special about the Post Road. It wouldn't be an attraction. It wouldn't be something that people would talk about in Target. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, you're next.
Hi, my name is Eunice Alexu. I live on 137 Shoreham Village Drive. And in the last 3 days, we have received over 160 petitions signed by neighbors in Shoreham Village Drive, Shoreham Terrace, Riverside, Longview, Grassmere, and including the Post Road where the strip mall is, with the restaurants next to where this proposed. And our biggest, when walking around and talking to the neighbors about it, most people did not even know about it. So that was a huge concern. The second one was all the unknowns, and regardless of anyone's position on the medical marijuana, it was the increased traffic. And you go into that strip mall right now, and there's maybe about 5 empty spots there at a given day. I mean, there's an Avis car rental at the very end, where some days they have more cars there than other days that aren't rented. That's a huge issue. Our street is right across the way. Again, like everyone has said, we have a lot of young children, a lot of high school, middle school children that their bus stop is right there. Is that going to be an issue? Is that going to be a safety issue? And all of these unknown are a huge thing. So here are all our list. I don't know who...
You're going to submit them?
Yes.
You can just submit it. We'll go around the table. It'll be submitted into evidence. It'll wind up with the staff. You just have to leave it here.
Okay, that's
and
fine.
And they're hand-signed. It's not
Yes.
a computer sign.
No, they're all hand-signed with
That's
comments. So we just wanted to present this
Yes, we
as,
appreciate it.
Our neighborhood and this close, is a very close-knit, and we protect each other, and this is what we thought of it, and we're completely opposed to this location.
Thank you. You can hand it to... Thank you. Yes, woman in the front.
I second all the things that have been, first of all, my name is Linda Coleman. I'm from 274 Shoreham Village Drive. I second everything that Leslie and Eunice have said, because I was one of the people collecting these things. Most people didn't even know about it, and we have only been collecting these signatures for 3 days, because we found out about it so recently. Very briefly, I've been a teacher for 20 years. And I moved into this neighborhood on Shoreham Village Drive, which is actually a closed circle. It has one entrance, one exit for 39 homes. There are 35 children living in there, which Leslie mentioned. This is their playground. Those children are out there with chalk in the middle of the street. They're riding bikes. It's one of the. It's an exemplary neighborhood. It is exceptional. It is so rare for children to be able to go to their friend's house and ring the bell, do you want to come out and play, without having to have mom make an appointment for you at 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon to go play with a play date. So at any rate, it's exceptional, it's so very special, and I'm really very worried to have something that close. I think it's just a residential area. I think it's the wrong place for it. As far as medical marijuana goes, I'm all for it if someone is suffering, but this is just, I think, the wrong place for it. Leslie mentioned her home is something like 500 feet away. Well, her home is already in the middle of the circle. The entrance to our, to Shoreham Village Drive is probably maybe the distance from this wall to this wall. It's just across the street. So, we're very concerned about that, and I thank you very much. One other quick thing, somebody mentioned from Mr. Lipson's attorney, I think, that there were 58 parking spots. I'm not quite sure what that is, unless that's the parking spots in the strip mall for 10 different businesses that are there.
I believe that's what was...
Yeah, all right,
Yeah,
it's for 10 different businesses, it's not just for theirs.
Yeah, and the parking calculations on that are sometimes complex, but they're representing that they have enough parking. But 58 is for all the businesses, not
All right.
just this.
Well, thank you very much for the consideration, and I hope you do not put it there. I'd like you to find my father was a policeman. I've always have my antennas up for danger. I want it to be in a safe place. I want it properly regulated. I want the best security possible for when it's distributed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Colvin. Somebody over here? You, sir. Either one of you two.
Good evening. My name is John Radshaw, and I live at 284 Shoreham Village Drive. I'm not going to repeat what the prior speakers have said, but I want to drill down on a couple of issues, particularly the series of questions raised by Commissioner Kennelly. In particular, Commissioner Kennelly, you talked about how...
You just address it generally to the commission, not just to him, okay?
By way of example, so it reminds the people the series of questions he covered about comparing this single item dispensary, which I wonder how it's a permitted use in the district, but putting that aside, how it somehow could be compared to other pharmacies. And it was brought up briefly at the end of Leslie's statement. Everyone leaving the dispensary is going to be in possession of high-quality, prepackaged, well, completely regulated marijuana. So there isn't going to be a need to guess who are the people that need to be targeted when it's there, available, right there on the corner in wide view. Now, putting that aside, and I think that's a huge security concern, and that could be alleviated by placing this dispensary somewhere else, like in a medical office facility, where you don't know what the people are doing when they're coming or going, whether it's for treatment or for counseling or to pick up their marijuana. I have no problems with the laws that are passed by this state, but placing this location is a problem. The next point I wanted to bring out is in your package you have a series of 8.5 by 11 photographs. One of them is a reverse shot taken with your back to the subject location. Looks at the parking lot. Unfortunately, that picture could have shown so much more. It's exceedingly deceptive because it cuts out the neighborhood in which I live. If you just lifted the camera up ever so slightly, you would see where the children stand when they wait to get on the bus and the entrance to the community that many of these people who are present, including myself, represent and express great concern about. In closing, if we're going to be concerned about busing the children for placing sidewalks and citing those sidewalks, I'd certainly hope that you would extend that and deny this certificate of zoning compliance, and perhaps Mr. Lipton can find a more suitable location. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, you, right there, yeah, next to Mr. Ranshaw.
Oh.
Yes, you. So I'm trying to get everybody in.
My name is Karen Wackerman. I live at 192 Shoreham Village Drive, and I'm sure there are people here who don't live in Shoreham Village Drive, but I'm kind of confused about this process. It seems like we're really putting the cart before the horse, because I know last week at that meeting up at the Consumer Protection Agency said that towns can create their own zoning regulations. We keep talking about the state regulations, but the town has the power to both decide to not have a dispensary in the town or to decide what the zoning rules should be if there is a dispensary. So it seems really premature to be considering this now when we haven't had a town-wide discussion about this, or I don't think you guys have considered any regulation changes about that. So we're sort of agreeing to something where we have not thought it through. We don't have rules. It doesn't make sense. I'm also troubled by the lack of information, the refusal to talk about which bank I think a lot of us just don't trust that there are things in place that should be. Also, it's clear to me, I would bet each of you $50 that in a year there will be many, many more patients using this than what's being projected. I think the fact that one doctor alone has done more than 500 prescriptions indicates to me that there will be cases, I don't know if it's abuse or what, but there will be more prescriptions than we suspect there will be. Also, I just wanted to correct that it's not necessary to amend the statute to add illnesses. It's actually, the statute gives that power to the Department of Consumer Protection. So it's just the regulators who can do it. They do have a process to follow, but they can do it. So they can add pain or whatever other things, which just means that it will be bigger and there will be more traffic and more potential crime. So please don't allow this in this location. Thank you.
My name is Linda Batchelder, and I live at 175 Shoreham Village Drive. And I did write you a letter, but my name was not listed there.
I don't think we got that one.
And it was sent via email over the weekend. Yes, it was sent to your address as well as to the TPZ commission at town.fairfield.
Oh, we have it, okay.
Okay, because I also
we'll make
gave
it part
that
of the
address
record.
to...
I didn't get it. We don't get them directly because our emails aren't public domain, but if it goes to the town, they forward them to us. So we'll see that
All right, because I distributed that address, so I just wanted to check to make sure that...
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I have a number of concerns. I have family in the Bay Area and California as well, and I've watched the process of what's gone on there. And I also have a brother who works in Boulder, both brothers, one's in Oakland and the other in Boulder, have just said, you know, do whatever you can to keep this out of your neighborhood because they have seen nothing good come from it. Now, I am a person who, on this list of conditions, I could get registered. So I do understand that there is a need. And then, you know, it's cancer, glaucoma, positive status for HIV tests, that's how I'm reading it, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, cachexia, which I am not sure what that is, wasting syndrome, neurological indication of Crohn's disease, PTSD, damage to the nervous tissue of the spinal cord with objective neurological indications of intractable spasticity. To me, that's a chronic bad back. And to me, that opens the door wide to people getting registered. So the whole idea that we'd see 28 patients a day at this facility, I would like to question the business model. That's in the first visit is a half an hour. The last time I spent a half an hour with a pharmacist or a doctor was several years ago. And that's your initial visit. Once you come for your initial visit, I'm assuming you know what products you want. You can come back anytime you'd like, as long as you haven't taken your whole 30-day supply. The cost of marijuana which I'm just guessing at, would lead me to believe that many people would not buy a 30-day supply in one shot, that they would not have it's going on the credit card versus cash, which is better because there's more likely that you could put it on your credit card. But the thought that somebody, just because they're registered, would only come once a month is a big assumption. And then also that in stating that there will only be 3, 5, 10, I've read 10 kind of max to start, is saying that these are regional. So I keep here and kind of go back to, well, it'll serve Fairfield. It's going to be regional. People are going to be coming on the highway. The way into this location is via the Circle, which we know how well the Circle works at the McDonald's. And the other way, easy way in that Google will take everybody is by the new shopping center where Whole Foods is in the series of lights on Grassmere. Already you sit at Grassmere, it takes me 3 to 4 tries to get through the intersections. It's all densely populated residential. I just don't think that bringing this quantity of traffic into the area is appropriate. And I don't agree that it will just be, I think we're guessing. So my guess is that it will be an awful lot more than what they're predicting. And that I would request that you give this all thoughtful consideration. Where do we really want these? Where does a regional facility in Fairfield belong, if it belongs? And I don't know if you have the ability to put a moratorium on this and discuss it and come up with a thoughtful plan for, do we want to regulate these like we regulate liquor stores? That they can only be so many feet apart, because the proliferation in other states has been enormous. That Colorado and California have just had a lot of hard time controlling it. Who gets, and it's just, we're at the beginning now, and we see these other models. We've tried to restrict her in Connecticut, but it still may be an issue. We're guessing, and I would urge you just to edge towards caution, especially with all the children we have in the street. I would repeat, I love the neighborhood, and I just see, the overspill, the guy who wants to sell his drugs to the people who are coming to the dispensary and wants to sell them for cheaper. I can see it ending up on our street. We're across the way. It's just, we're a little too close. But thank you for your consideration, and I hope you'll give this thoughtful consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Bachelor. I'm going to, Representative Kupchak, and then this gentleman over here. You're next after her. She had her hand up in the back first, sir. You'll be next. Yeah, no, it's okay. This is Representative Kupchak. She had sent us a note earlier that was alluded to, so I'm happy she was able to.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. And I know that you weren't expecting to have this very controversial issue dumped in your laps. Like I wrote to you earlier in my email, that I didn't vote for the medical marijuana bill, not based on the fact that I don't think individuals should have the access to use medical marijuana. I just felt that it's illegal in the federal government, and the state is sort of making some assumptions, I think. I think the whole industry is sort of precarious. And even the regulation review or committee that was reviewing how this was all going to work out just a couple of weeks ago, a colleague of mine who sits on that committee mentioned that there were so many unanswered questions about how this all was going to work out that he had great concerns about how Connecticut was going to move forward. And then I open up the paper and find out Fairfield is, designated for a dispensary. I don't think we should have it in any neighborhood in Fairfield. I just think there's too many risks involved with this process. I don't know why they can't have it mail ordered, or people can't grow marijuana in their own homes if they have a prescription. But frankly, I think this is going to be a can of worms, and I hate to see our state end up like California, quite frankly. And I certainly don't think our hometown of Fairfield should have a dispensary in it. I just don't think it's right. I think that it needs to be either in a hospital or some real secure location, but not on our post road, not next door to a residential neighborhood, not where kids are, not where a bus stop is. I just think this is the wrong prescription for Fairfield, and I know this is tough for you because it's a big deal. You don't want to make a decision that you think is hurtful for people who are ill, but that's not your decision as planning and zoning or residents of this town. We're trying to protect our town, and many times you make decisions about waters or creeks or bothering people's basements. My God, this is a big deal for our community, and I just don't think we should do it, and I really hope you will reject it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Ray Wilhelm. I'm at 168 Shoreham Village Drive. It's almost a sweep, I guess, for us, but I'll be very brief. I've spent about 35 years or more in the pharmaceutical industry. I know a little bit about pharmaceuticals. This is not a pharmaceutical, okay? I've been involved in a launch of at least 15 drugs. I've read the data. I've looked at the clinical trials, the efficacy, side effect, safety issues. There's a lot of data involved. There's a lot of regulation that is imposed based on that data. And all we heard tonight was, I don't know, maybe, we think, perhaps, and we hope for the best. I think this is a slam dunk no, in my judgment. I hope you agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilhelm. Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Tess Atkins. I'm 16 years old and I live at 308 Shoreham Village Drive. I'm here with my mom as long as everyone else on my street. Being one of the older kids on my street and babysitting almost all of the little kids, as Leslie Geary said, I am a normal daily babysitter for her kids, and being one of those people that they look up to take care of them, it's very scary to me knowing that the crime could rocket with the marijuana facility being right across the street and my bus stop being right at the edge of my street. It's scary with all the traffic coming at me every morning, but knowing that I'm at risk for getting hurt because of crimes or guns or anything that Leslie has mentioned, and knowing that I have part of the responsibility to protect some of the kids in my neighborhood, I personally don't think it would be a good idea from a perspective as one of the kids on the street. I hope you take that into consideration when thinking about this medical marijuana facility. Thank you.
Any other, yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Carol Way, and for the last 4 years I've served on the RTM
for District 10. Before that, I served for 4 years on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I think all of the arguments have been very cogent ones this evening, and I have to tell you that I find it interesting that we're having to argue with these kinds of arguments when, as zoning boards, we refused to have Applebee's come to town because we might have drunk drivers leaving the restaurant later in the evening, or the Cozy restaurant not being able to go on the post road because there wouldn't be enough parking, and things along that line. We are talking about zoning. The parking is certainly a major concern in connection with this whole facility. It's in a V there by, as everyone has said, with the Rotary, with people coming out from the Bed Bath and Beyond area, and from Fairfield Motor Inn. It is a rather nightmare. In addition, I really do feel that even though I have a family member who could certainly benefit from, since she has had both cancer and chronic illnesses and seizures, this would be something that could possibly be helpful. Nonetheless, I really feel that this is the wrong place, it is the wrong time, and it really and truly should be in a totally different situation. I have 4 grown children, 2 of whom have lived and 1 of whom went to school in California. One of them has a friend in California who does run one of these dispensaries, and I asked him about it. That friend, in the first year or 2, was broken into at gunpoint, held up. They were robbed. It was broken into when they weren't in the facility. I don't think that this is the kind of thing that we really want to find in a residential area, and it is too congested an area. Thank you very much for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, staff. My name is Joel Green. I live in Fairfield. I practice law in Bridgeport with the law offices of Green and Gross. It's my pleasure to appear before you this evening on behalf of David Foster, who lives on Shoreham Village Drive. Fairfield is a caring community. Fairfield is a compassionate community, and it's a community with great generosity of spirit. And I offer that as a preface to the remark that at the end of the day, this is not a referendum on the use of medical marijuana. There's no one in this room, I would guess, who has not been touched by cancer in one way or another, with a family member, a friend, or the like. But contrary to Mr. Lipton's comment, this is not about freedom of choice this evening. This is a zoning matter, and certainly there were some very good comments made this evening, but let's talk about the zoning issue, and if we can just put the zoning issue into some context. The applicant is seeking a certificate of zoning compliance. Section 12.2 of your regulations requires an application for a certificate of zoning compliance pursuant to Section 2.2, and it provides for certain standards for the issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance where there is a change of use. In this case, there is a proposed change of use. There was, as I understand it, a deli operating in this space pursuant to Section 12.4.15 of your regulations. which allows restaurant and food service as a permitted use in a designed commercial district. The proposal then is to change this to, I suppose, what falls under a retail sale of goods under section 12.4.26, which is also an approved use. The regulations put the burden on the applicant to prove certain standards in order for this commission to grant a certificate of zoning compliance. I would suggest as an initial comment that the center is one that, in my opinion, is one with a poor circulation and layout generally, but obviously that's something that an expert on that sort of thing would offer. But I would suggest that in the fair and reasonable exercise of your powers, you can't say that this applicant met its burden with respect to proving the facts that it needs in order to enable this commission to find that this is zoning compliant. I was struck by the fact that the patient population, while I understand it cannot be quantified because we're in a new frontier here, I think that really the evidence was really lacking in terms of some real quantity, and I understand these calls have been made to the state to find out what the patient population is regionally and that sort of thing. But there's no telling how that may change. There's no telling how the ability to service more patients may change depending on changes in the regulations. It's uncertain how many facilities there are going to be statewide. I am not suggesting that a facility shouldn't be in this community. What I am suggesting is that I look at a center and I understand the fear of those who live in this town, but certainly the residents who live directly across the street on Shoreham Village Drive, because to some degree it is the fear of the unknown. And this applicant has not allayed any of those fears in terms of, for example, providing some sort of better projection. Now, I have not had an opportunity to see new materials, and I understand there were some new materials submitted. I'm not sure. I came to the office of the zoning department yesterday morning at 8:30 and reviewed the application. I understand there may have been some new materials submitted by the applicant, but I certainly...
They were actually submitted a couple weeks ago.
All right.
Yeah,
so
it was
then
just a letter saying they expect 2 people an hour.
Okay. All right.
Well, do the math from there.
It struck me then that there was not, for example, any sort of a traffic study of the potential impact of this use on the flow in the center, the use of the center, the parking in the center, the queuing for the center, indeed the ability of the residents of Shoreham Village Drive to get in and out of their street. I'm aware that this is a congested area at certain times of the day, and I would have thought that with an important issue, with this case of what we'll call a case of first impression, the new frontier of this sort of use, that the applicant didn't offer something on that, in that regard. Certainly the effect on property values, and there is a concern, and I heard several of the residents speak in terms of what that impact might be. And I know that this commission has frequently heard from a realtor or an appraiser or someone who would suggest that there would be no particular impact by virtue of this particular use proximate to this particular residential neighborhood, or indeed the residential neighborhood behind the center and so forth. I didn't see that in the file. I would ask that the commission review the records with respect to the center in terms of the compliance of the parking, because as I was sitting in the back of the room, I do recall that I was involved before this commission previously with the operator of this center because there was a previous club or restaurant that was, as I recall, was allowing illegal outdoor use of a bar late at night on weekends, and I remember I was retained by certain residents of Shoreham Village Drive because at closing time everyone was outside in the parking lot drinking and there was a considerable amount of noise. I do remember reviewing the original site plans for the development of the center. I did raise an issue, I recall, regarding parking compliance in the center as it exists, because I'm not sure
that the existing layout of the parking spaces is as it was portrayed on the original site plan, but I don't have any evidence for you, but I think this commission can ask staff to review that and to take a look at the center. I'm also aware that some of the facilities, such as dumpsters and that sort of thing, were being used to take up parking spaces, so I'm not sure that there's adequate parking. But basically, I would suggest that once again, the applicant has a certain burden. I think that particularly with a new, sort of a new use, that the applicant has almost a greater burden. And I think that while there have been changes in uses in that center, they are from one use that I would say we're more familiar with, that have a track record, that you know what to expect, that the zoning enforcement officer knows what to expect, that the neighbors have a reasonable understanding of what to expect when there's a change of use. And it is the fear and of not knowing what the potential impact is that makes this application so important. But once again, it is merely a zoning matter at this time. And I would just suggest, I would urge the commission not to issue a certificate at this time unless and until an application is put forth that satisfies the requirements of your regulations and that provides you with the information that you need to make a fair and reasonable judgment on the compliance of this use with the zoning regulations.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Appreciate me. Does any other member of the public wish to be heard now? Yes, sir. This gentleman in the front.
My name is Gene Krasinski. I live at 56 Shoreham Terrace. First of all, I'm not against medical marijuana. I'm against the location of the dispensary. Traffic is a problem. Now, without any extra traffic, they cut down our street, which is 1 block long. I don't know if you're familiar with Shoreham Terrace. It goes from the Post Road to Riverside Drive. To beat the light at Riverside Drive, they come up our street and go down Riverside, or come Riverside up to the Post Road, just to beat the damn light. Another thing I'd like to say, the federal government is against it. On September 10th, there was a hearing in Washington about the medical marijuana. They had the police chief from Colorado and a representative from the governor of Colorado. They're having one hell of a problem with it. In the immediate area of the one dispensary, crime rate increased 1,000%. This is a fact, not hearsay. They're having trouble with children as young as 5 years old getting a hold of this marijuana. They didn't say how, but that's also a fact. Now, to bring this into a strip mall on the Post Road, it's ridiculous. And like I say, I'm not against it. My family is no stranger to cancer, but not in a strip mall on a Post Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to be heard? Members of the public. Okay. Knowing how our rules work then, we've heard from the public, and I thank you all for speaking. Once I close public comment, we'll go back to the applicant. The applicant has a right to rebut. They can make comments, they can rebut any information, but they do get the last word, so there's no further public comment. That's the way our rules work, regardless of what the application is, not just for this applicant, but any applicant. So I'd call Attorney Whitney and Mr. Lipton. Do you have anything further to offer?
Perhaps take a 2-minute break and chat for a minute.
You can. We'd like to get done by 11, as long as you foresee that. Okay, then that's fine. You can get together for 2 minutes. Together, yes.
Together.
Not with us. The 2-minute recess.
As you know, when you're doing rebuttal to a whole bunch of statements, I'm going to be pretty disjointed. It is certainly a concern to us that the residents are so opposed to this, and we regret that. And I understand that their concerns are heartfelt and sincere. I do think that there's a lot of misinformation out there, but it's true that this violates federal law, and there are a number of unknowns. It was said that we don't know a lot of things. Well, we don't know certain things, but there's a lot that we do know, and I think it's worth letting the residents know what we do know that I think should present some comfort to them. As the members of the commission know, the security requirements for this use are exceedingly rigorous. Chief McNamara said that he hasn't seen the security measures for this facility. He only saw the ones for West Haven. Well, the reasons he saw the ones for West Haven is because they are more fully developed. And it was just to show him by virtue of comparison that this is the same level of security that will be in Fairfield. And you've read the regulations, you know that there will be a perimeter alarm, there will be a panic alarm, there will be a 24-hour video camera. And I think most important that probably the residents don't know is no one can even enter this building, or this part of the building, this facility, that is not a registered with the state user of medical marijuana. So there is no danger that children are going to wander in or that an illegal user is going to wander in. They can't get in the door. The comparisons with California and Colorado are not apt. I believe if you ask the commissioner about California and Colorado, he would say that they are both a mess, and that our regulations in Connecticut are far, far more strict and more carefully thought out than California and Colorado. I believe in Colorado there's something like 1,200 dispensaries. I mean, there alone, you know that that's an exceedingly different scheme than is going to be the case in Connecticut. So please don't take California and Colorado's problems as being indicative of what you're going to see here. You are not going to see that. It is true, actually, that drug-related crime goes down when marijuana is legalized. That is true even from the states where it's not so carefully regulated. Questions about fraudulent prescriptions. Prescriptions can only be written by specially licensed physicians for specially licensed patients for 11 specific conditions. And those patients, every time they pick up their prescription, that is registered and is reported to the state drug control agency every single day. It's very hard to imagine how there could be a problem with fraudulent prescriptions. There's been a question of harm to property value, and there's no evidence that there would be a harm to property value. I'm reminded when I spoke with Commissioner Rubenstein the other day when he was speaking to other municipal officials, he said, "I wish everybody could go to Portland, Maine. There's a dispensary running right in the middle of Portland, Maine, and you don't even know it's there. It causes no more fuss and probably less fuss than a physician's office. It is run in a dignified, secure manner, and it causes no problems to anyone." There was a question about couldn't these be as regulated as liquor stores? They're actually much more regulated than liquor stores. As I explained to you before, a liquor store model was one that the Commission considered and then passed regulations that are stricter than that. I don't think it matters, but the previous use was not a delicatessen, it was an insurance office. Questions about how can we better estimate our patient population. We can't better estimate our patient population. But when a physician comes to town and opens a new office, can they reliably estimate their patient population? I can't imagine how they can. In fact, we probably have a little advantage on them because we at least know how many people are registered today. We have not given you a traffic study. I can't imagine, I've been doing zoning now 28 years. I've never submitted a traffic study for a use that's going to generate 8 cars an hour. I suppose we could have done that. I think our traffic expert would have laughed, but it certainly does not seem that would be necessary. My understanding is that your planning department your planning office has decided that this use, which has been portrayed as a single product retail pharmacy, is allowed in this zone. Therefore, you have decided that use generates a level of traffic that can be handled in this zone. We believe that this use does meet all your zoning requirements. After all, this is not a special use. This is not even a site plan review. This is a statement of zoning compliance. Your review has been very careful and very thorough, and there's been a lot thrown at you because it's a brand new use and it has some wrinkles that you don't deal with every day. However, you've also heard, not tonight, but you heard the last public hearing, about a number of people who have testified how much they need this use and they think it would be a benefit to the town of Fairfield. You're way ahead of the curve, actually, in the state. I don't know that another town has approved a dispensary yet. I believe there are a number of applications pending, and there are a number of towns that have passed moratoria to prevent them from having to consider this at this time. But we've given you a use for which there is a definite need, that is allowed in this zone, that has security measures that far exceed anything else you've ever seen in this town. At 8 cars per hour maximum, can't create a traffic problem. If we thought there was a traffic problem, what we would do is make the entire operation by appointment only, and we can control the flow of traffic. I don't see how this is a harm to any children. In fact, no children will know what it is. It will say CT Wellness Center, and sick people will go in there in a very secure manner and get a very small amount of a drug that they need and that the state has decided that they need. We believe it is appropriate, it is necessary, and will be a benefit to Fairfield. And as you know, we're operating under something of a deadline because the application process to the state is very rigorous, and there's a deadline for us to do that. So I thank you. I know you've put in hours and hours and hours that you didn't see coming, and I thank you for your very thoughtful and thorough consideration. And we ask that you do approve this, and if possible, approve it very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Whitney. Therefore, hearing nothing further from the applicant, I will close the hearing, and this meeting is adjourned. I just wanted to say one more thing to the public.
I just have a clarification on something that Attorney Whitney just
No, you can't ask questions. The hearing's closed. That's another thing I would say that, those of you that have been sending emails or, letters or what, we can't receive anything now that the hearing's closed. It's not fair to the applicant, it's not fair to the public. So there's no more submittals by the applicant. There's no more submittals by the public. It's just not fair. If the public submits something, the applicant doesn't have to see it. If the applicant submits something, the public doesn't. So basically, the hearing is closed. We'll decide it probably at our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks. It'll certainly be on the agenda. So for those of you with an interest, I just say, if you wanted to write us, please don't, because I'd ask the staff not to forward it, because it's wrong for us to get post-hearing communication on an application. Okay? Thank you.